This episode of the Cult Popture podcast was brought to you by our Patreon. If you want to tell us which films we should watch, listen to up to 2 extra exclusive podcasts a month, or give us something to discuss in our new post-credit scenes at the end of each episode, then please consider joining the cult and donating at www.patreon.com/cultpopture. You best start believing in podcasts about Pirates of the Caribbean, Mr. Martin. You're in one.
Very funny start to the podcast.
It was always going to start this way.
That was provided to you by my co-host, Alexander Jones, aka Alex Jones.
No, don't tell people that's my name. My name is AJ, and yes, I am annoyed that I share a name with someone more famous, and I'll confidently say worse than me.
Wow.
But more successful.
Yeah.
So I guess worse is a matter of perspective.
And I'm embarrassed to say that I share a podcast with someone who shares the name of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what is this podcast, speaking of which?
This podcast is called the Cult Popture Podcast. However, this specific series within that podcast is called Film Franchise Fortnights, where myself, Richard, and my beautiful partner, AJ, partner in podcasting, not life partner, AJ, you cover film franchises.
Every 2 weeks we've done, this will be our 111th?
111, baby.
111th film franchise. Arguably, there are nuances to that statement.
And there are those who doubt we've watched any of them. Do you reckon there are Cult Popture truthers who claim that we've never...
Yeah,
I do
absolutely.
know of one guest who didn't watch the films, or who didn't watch all of the films, but never told us on the podcast, but I found out.
What? Who was it?
Well, I don't want to spoil it.
Tell me. I'll bleep it.
I'm alluding to it.
What is going on? Who's done this?
I'm
Why
just
did this happen?
alluding to a fun little behind the scenes trivia, which up until now was unbeknownst to AJ. So today we're talking about Pirates of the Caribbean, and just off the bat, I'm going to be pronouncing it Caribbean, not Caribbean.
Okay.
What are you going to be doing?
I'll probably absentmindedly switch between them, terrified that if I commit to one, I'll be chastised by the camp of the other.
Yeah. So hopefully, I don't know. Yeah, I've just always grown up saying Caribbean. I don't know. Depends on the context. Let's see. Someone out there count how many times we say
Jack Sparrow says it in the first one as Caribbean, I think. Anyway, there's going to be a lot of pirate voice on this episode, I think.
Should we do the same thing we did with Terminator, where you're not allowed to impersonate?
Absolutely not. Pirate voice is
oh my god, I've been working on my Jack Sparrow all week.
Pirate voice is so much more fun than Schwarzenegger voice.
Yeah, all right.
And it's got lots of different versions. Maybe you're a confident pirate, like an "arr," or maybe you're a lackey pirate, like a "yarrrr."
You've got self-confidence issues?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think pirates suffered from self-confidence issues? Here's what I want to know with pirates, is that when pirates were around, they weren't exactly celebrated individuals of society. And now, 300 years later, we have, not only pirate movies, but we have, like, little kids
pirate
TV
theme park
shows.
rides.
Like preschool shows about pirates and stuff, And it makes you wonder what kind of, like, horrible...
In 300 years, it's like ISIS of the Middle East.
Right? ISIS of the desert or something. Are we going to have that? I guess pirate is a bit more broad than, like, terrorist. But I've always thought that like... When will there be a Disney terrorist movie?
Yeah.
It'll be about a good terrorist.
Yeah. Like a wacky terrorist.
Yeah.
So anyway, Pirates of the Caribbean is currently has 5 films in the franchise. So, but you've kind of got like what's considered like an original trilogy, and then they kind of like followed that up with some more films, or like a couple of attempts to kind of reinvigorate it. But you got Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl that came out in 2003. Then you got Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Man's Chest 3 years later in 2006, which was shot back to back with Pirates of the Caribbean: At World's End in 2007, which came out in 2007. Then you've got Pirates of the Caribbean: On Stranger Tides 2011, and then finally for now, Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Men Tell No Tales 2017.
Very cool. Pirates of the Caribbean. This is a big franchise for the podcast about franchises.
Yeah.
This is one of the big ones, probably one of the more defining franchises of our lifetimes. And I want to say the last great Spielbergian action adventure franchise. We haven't had one, not a big enough one.
Well, yeah, and I guess we'll probably talk about this more, but my kind of way of looking at it is that like Pirates of the Caribbean was the last great adventure movie, the first one, and then that genre just kind of got usurped by superhero movies. Like that fills the gap in the market, and there's enough of them that that you don't need that's hard for an action adventure to come through. But then I would say the closest thing we've had recently is the Jumanji sequels.
I agree.
Jungle Cruise next year, what's now been moved to next year, is clearly trying to fill that same void.
And I'm looking forward to these movies. Also, I guess in between Pirates of the Caribbean and the like superhero onslaught, you could maybe say Transformers slots in there somewhere as well. Yeah. But even Transformers Transformers could have been that like E.T. Indiana Jones-esque action adventure movie, or the Mummy, Brendan Fraser's Mummy movie, but it was just too gross.
Yeah, well, but then you look at like it is definitely possible. You look at something like Bumblebee.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, shall we crack on with talking about the first film? So,
Please.
Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl is directed by Gore Verbinski. It's also produced by Jerry Bruckheimer, who is like kind of one of the big names in creating this franchise.
When he walks past you, you hear the Pirates of the Caribbean theme song quietly playing, just emitting from his body.
So, AJ, what is this film about? Spare no detail.
Okay, so it is, in broad terms, I'll go broad and then I'll go into the minutiae.
Give us like 6 plot synopses, each one with more detail than the
last. So broadly, it's set in the early 1700s. It's mid
early to mid. They established for the first one a 30-year period between 1720 and 1750 that it could take place, but then I think the fourth one explicitly takes place in 1750.
Right. Okay. So somewhere in there, and it follows a bunch of different characters, including a cursed pirate ship called the Black Pearl, and it's a bunch of cursed pirates who crew this ship because they all stole a medallion. And let's get the rules of the medallion established up top, because they're ever so slightly confusing, I think, if you're not paying attention. So a bunch of pirates stole this Aztec treasure. There was a bunch of coins, and they spent them all, and then were cursed so that they talk about how like they feel like shit. Basically, they can't.
They're like,
taste.
oh, I'm fucking knackered, eh?
Yeah. They can't taste. They can't feel anything. They're immortal, and when they go into the moonlight, they are revealed that they're actually skelly men, skeleton
boys.
men.
Yeah.
And so they are the antagonistic force that are chasing after Elizabeth Swan, who is a governor's daughter who has the last of the Aztec medallions, and her would-be lover, Will Turner, who is the heir to the one cursed Black Pearl pirate that they threw overboard because he felt bad.
Yeah.
And so they need Will Turner's blood to return the last medallion with Will Turner's blood to break the curse. And what I haven't mentioned is that there's also a wacky pirate who's essentially the protagonist of the series, though maybe shouldn't be, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that, who is Captain Jack Sparrow, who was mutinied by the Black Pearl. Used to be the captain, but mutined by the Black Pearl moments before they stole the treasure and got cursed. And so his kind of interconnected journey as he just wants the Black Pearl back.
Yeah.
And there's there's a moment in it where he talks about how funny it is that he was cast out just before they all stole the treasure, so he actually narrowly missed out on the curse. And it's sort of like so Elizabeth initially tells them that her surname is Turner, so they think she's the heir, and then they find out it's Will, and it's this whole swashbuckling adventure of going to different islands and different places and different monsters and all sorts of things. It is Richard. It is maybe my favorite blockbuster of all time. This is an excellent film.
It's this is a 10 out of 10. It's a 5-star film.
Absolutely.
It's one of the all-time great blockbusters.
I agree.
I was too scared to see it in the cinema. I was only 10 years old. And the trailer with the zombie pirates. But then my sister went to go see it, became obsessed with Johnny Depp, and then I caught it on video between the first one and the second one. And yeah, I was like, "Fuck, this is amazing!" Like, yeah, I can see why everyone loves this. And I'll admit, it was a little bit scary, but
okay. No, I love this movie. I think it is so exciting and fun and like something that the sequels lack. It's very family friendly, which I feel like the sequels aren't as much, despite being scary. But again, we've talked about this.
Well, it's that kind of like that the trusting the family to be family friendly, like like they did in the 80s and the 90s. Whereas today it's like, well, if it's family friendly, it means it has to only appeal to kids, but there's a couple of things in there for mum and dad.
Yeah.
Whereas this is like, you know, it's made to be watched by a family. So maybe someone that might be a bit young for the kind of zombie pirate things. It's like you're watching it with mum and dad and you feel safe.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and so it's like, and actually, it's not a kids film. It's actually made to be watched as a family.
Yeah, I agree. It's excellent. What else? So getting more into the minutiae. What else do I need to say? What are you wanting me to?
Oh, you don't actually have to. That was very good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So it's interesting you mentioned about the mutiny, because kind of one of the things that appealed to the actors with the script is that, like, so pirate movies were big in like the 40s and 50s. It was a famously dead genre for a long time. There's a film called Cutthroat Island, which was one of the biggest bombs of all time, and that was like the final nail in the coffin for the pirate genre. Then Pirates of the Caribbean came along, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, like you can actually make a good pirates movie again." But pirate movies are all kind of like follow the same kind of formula. There's always a mutiny, and they're always after some treasure. However, it's in Pirates of the Caribbean. The mutiny's already happened, and it's about pirates trying to return treasure, which is like a fun like spin on it. But yeah, the production of this film's kind of interesting. It's like this film is lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
Like, actually, it's one of those, like, every single thing came together to make the best possible film. All these things that wouldn't happen today, they wouldn't have happened a year earlier, they wouldn't have happened a year later, but they everything just fell into place and created this, like, perfect blockbuster. The film had been worked on since the 90s, and at that point, it was kind of just like a straight pirate movie. It was just going to be this big swashbuckling adventure, and Jack Sparrow was, like, your typical kind of, like, macho, super straight hero. Errol Flynn is like, they keep saying it's like an Errol Flynn type, but you know, would be played by like Matthew McConaughey or something like that. Like, and the 2003 Matthew McConaughey we're talking. So he'd just wear like a vest, and he would just have his abs out, and it would be like, oh, who's this cool guy take us on an adventure. It was actually written for Hugh Jackman, but he wasn't considered a big enough star at the time. But then they managed to get Johnny Depp on board, who was a well-respected actor, but maybe not like bankable at the time. So this really like thrust him into like A-list kind of.
Oh, and it's the performance of his career.
Oh, 100%.
This is the Johnny Depp role, right?
Yeah. But when Johnny Depp came on board, and it was like you can find online like concept art of Jack Sparrow when Johnny Depp was first cast, and he's got the eyeliner and stuff like that, but he doesn't have the scraggly beard. He's kind of just like, it just looks like a handsome Johnny Depp with eyeliner. But then him and Gore Verbinski sort of workshop this other version of the character, and the genesis of it was that Johnny Depp, and a lot of this is like, if you know a little bit about Pirates of the Caribbean, you probably know a lot of this behind the scenes story. It's one of those kind of movies, but you know, it's worth mentioning. Is that so his idea was, well, pirates were the rock stars of the 1700s, so he would base his performance on his friend Keith Richards, who's, you know, obviously a famous rock star, who would later appear in the third and fourth films playing his father. But yeah, so he kind of based his performance on that. So it's like it's a little bit drunk, it's a little bit like fluid sexuality, and things like that. And the Michael Eisner and Bob Iger like hated this.
I'll bet.
The heads of Disney, they fucking hated it. And apparently, like while they were like in pre-production, and even like there's rumors that like even while they were filming, they were trying to shut the movie down because they were like, no, he's too gay, he's too like all these things. He's too you know, like drunk and flamboyant and all this stuff, and it's not going to work. But there was Dick Cook, who was the chairman of Disney, apparently was like the one guy that was like, I think this is going to work, kind of thing. And so he kind of worked and developed a lot of respect amongst them. But that isn't to say that all of Johnny Depp's ideas were good for the film. There's a famous thing that Johnny suggested that Jack should have had his nose cut off at some point, and it had been like hastily reattached and had now like turned blue. Because it was like the circulation wasn't very good.
Wow.
And instead of like being scared of things like drowning and stuff, he would be scared of like the common cold and pepper, anything that makes you sneeze.
I think there is that's a cool idea for a character, but I think Jack Sparrow already has enough that he doesn't need an extra quirk like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a blue-nosed pirate sounds like the stuff of legends. And maybe that could have been one of the villains as opposed to, you know.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so what would you say the film is on Rotten Tomatoes?
96.
You would think so, wouldn't you? It's 79%.
What the hell? Who doesn't like this movie?
But and the critics score is only 86.
Wow, that's insane.
And
that offends me.
Yeah, I will say though that this is, and you know, a little hint for later on. This is the only film that's rated fresh.
What? Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought we were in the minority for being a Pirates of the Caribbean purist.
Yeah, should we just get this out of the way now that the first one, like, so you know how we talk about how like some franchises have like only one like great one and then like a bunch of good ones, or like only one good film. Pirates of the Caribbean has one great film.
Yeah.
And no other good films.
So Pirates of the Caribbean, in a way, is the perfect franchise in that each film arguably is half as good as the last one. And we're not the first ones to say this. And listen, I know some of the listeners out there are like, oh, the second one. Listen to me. This series, I don't think we're going to talk about this so early, but this series is infuriating.
Yeah.
It is one of the, like, the sequels to this perfect film are so, like, missed the mark by such a huge margin that it makes me want to fucking cry. And it's like, it's not even like all the ingredients weren't there. Yeah. The director returned for the first two sequels and all the cast returned. It's like, you make this swashbuckling mega hit with the first one, and then you sit down and you go, okay, where do we take the sequels? And it's honestly like they committed to the worst possible direction. And they never looked back.
We'll talk about it more, but
I'm sorry, I'm jumping the gun.
That is a kind of, fun little tease for what we think of the remaining films.
This is going to be an impassioned podcast.
Oh, 100%.
This is going to be depressing and upsetting for me, for you, for the listeners. It's going to be, this is a tragedy. This is a Hollywood tragedy. And we'll talk more about why that is exactly. But in the meantime, I want to cozy up into the little nook that is The Curse of the Black Pearl. 10 out of 10
Yeah, let's
film.
just spend as much time talking about it as we can.
So I watched this film a week ago for the podcast. I watched all the rest of them this week, finished part 5 last night. Everyone in my flat went to bed and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to rewatch the first one. So I rewatched the first one again. And I was like, I love this movie so much. It's so good. It's one of the best movies ever made.
Which is so that's I think 3 times now on there's our third franchise where one of the hosts of this podcast has rewatched a film in the fortnight because
Wow.
I watched SpongeBob Sponge Out of Water twice because I watched it and then I was telling Dave about it and he was like, "Do you want to watch it again?" And I was like, "Yeah, why not?" And I watched Scream twice. And now you've done it with Pirates of the Caribbean.
And I loved it. I got more out of it the second time.
Yeah.
Watched it the second time with subtitles on so that I could understand a little bit
All
more
the pirate
of
language.
Yeah, well, and with the rules of the universe, I don't want to say it's confusing. It's just if you stop paying attention for a bit, and it's not like you get lost. It's just it's more you gain more from perfectly understanding. The rules of the curse and things like that.
Yeah. Let's talk about the characters. So, Johnny Depp as Jack Sparrow. You mentioned it before, but what a good performance! Like, it's one of those things that, like, you know, it's like it's lost on children today how good he was in the first film. Like, he was nominated for Best Actor at the Academy Awards for this film. Insanity.
That's
I
crazy.
should check out who he was up against actually as well. But yeah, what do you think of Johnny Depp? Do you want to describe just how like?
Well, it's first of all, when this came out, and maybe it was more the sequels than this one, but for those who are too young to remember, at this time in the 2000s, Johnny Depp was the greatest living actor. And I'm not saying he was, I'm saying that's how he was treated. Like, Johnny Depp was fucking hot property. Right?
Yeah.
And I remember reading an IMDb message board thread that was like, I wonder what the day will be like when Johnny Depp dies. And it was written like, you know, the world would be it would be less for this perfect actor taken out of this mortal coil.
Yeah. It was kind of because of this film that he reached that status.
For sure.
Yeah.
I didn't actually see this film in the cinemas. I saw it based on 1,000 recommendations afterwards. I think my family watched it and we all really enjoyed it. I saw all but the fourth one in theaters though. But we'll get more onto that later. But Johnny Depp, it's just this strange, out of left field performance that if I were directing the film and Johnny Depp brings this idea forward that he plays Keith Richards, I'd be like, nah.
I don't know who that is, sorry.
It's just one of those things where it's like, I wouldn't be brave enough to go all in on the bankable stuff. Well, I guess he wasn't that bankable, but
yeah. Well, but it's like I mean, like, try to think of the same kind of level of like really respected actor who most people know but hasn't done like this kind of role. I mean, it would almost be like if you're making a huge Disney blockbuster and Ryan Gosling's like, I just want to fucking go all out. You know, like an actor who's like known for kind of a bit more prestigious kind of things, but is really well respected and everyone knows who he is. And it's like, fuck, dude, like you might tank your career with this. Yeah,
exactly. And so I think the character is so good in the first one, especially because if you actually balance all the different pieces of the plot and how they work together, because I was thinking about this a lot when I rewatched it last night. What's great about it is that the villains, the cursed crewmen of the Black Pearl and Captain Barbossa, played by Jeffrey Rush, they are incredibly sympathetic villains, and I think that's very cool. It's not like they want to break the curse so that they can take over the world. They just want to break the curse.
He just wants to eat an apple and fuck.
And if Johnny Depp or Captain Jack Sparrow's presence wasn't in this film, like if I was Will Turner, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'll go with you.
Yeah.
I'll go for a trip.
Yeah.
I'll go for a trip. I'll break your curse for you.
Yeah.
There's almost no needed animosity between them. The animosity comes from the fact that they wronged Jack Sparrow.
Yeah.
So Jack Sparrow actually provides the catalyst with which the villains are the villains. Without Jack Sparrow, they're not villains.
Yeah,
they're just pirates. They would be the main characters of the movie, you know?
Yeah.
But they're bad people. They're bad people, and that's what's crucial to it. And so Jack Sparrow could be taken out of the film, and you would have, you know, a perfectly adequate pirate film. But he's what brings the stakes in a way, because he's why they're villains. He's why they're bad guys.
And apparently that zombie pirate element was added quite late in the game because obviously we haven't really mentioned this, but it's based on a ride at at Disneyland, and it's quite an old ride, and it's kind of just like you sit in a boat and you go through, and it's like, oh, yo ho, pirate's life for me, and they just like you observe like these tableaus, but at the start of the ride, there's like these dangling skeletons, and you see them in the movie as well, that when Jack's coming into port, he sees them, and it's like, pirates be warned. Essentially, it's like pirates that have been left there to hang and have, their flesh has rotted away. But in the ride, there's a one skeleton is like propped up turning a steering wheel, and so it looks like it's like a zombie, but it's like, they're just like, I presume they're just like, oh, we're an extra skeleton, I'll be funny if this one's driving the thing. And then the narration says, dead men tell no tales, and they were kind of like, what if they were zombies? And it's like, and that's what that's what sort of brings it all together. It's such a like fun thing, and like the curse, and then so like the final battle between Barbossa and Sparrow is like they're constantly shifting in and out of the moonlight, and so one of them gets stabbed, and then it's like, oh, turns out I'd taken a medallion, so I'm cursed now. Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's excellent. It's such a cool fight scene. I love when Barbossa, who is probably one of the best characters in the movie as well, and I'm sure
100%, yeah.
He's so Jack's taken one of the medallions to curse himself so he can be immortal while he fights the bad guys. And there's a part in the middle of this sword fight where Captain Barbossa says, "So what are we doing here, Jack? We're just going to be two immortal souls fighting till the trumpets sound on Judgment Day." And for some reason, I always really loved that line.
Yeah,
like just like the consideration of that is like, what are we doing?
Yeah, we can't hurt each other.
Die.
Yeah.
It's so cool. And so that the I don't know if we wanted to talk more about the characters, but one of the kind of realizations I had watching this film and why it's so good, and maybe why the sequels aren't so good, is that you remember when we talked about what makes a good video game movie, considering there are none.
Yeah.
Right. And we were talking about how the Clue movie, based on the game Clue or Cluedo, depending where you play it, it constructs it so that the rules of the game are part of the story. And
same with Angry Birds.
Yeah, exactly. In the Clue movie, they have to work out who killed the character in what room and with what. Like, that's the crux of the story.
Yeah.
Pirates of the Caribbean is an adaptation of a Disney ride. There is a rhythm to every action scene in this film. Yeah. There's the when Will and Jack first meet, they're fighting in the blacksmith shop, and they're like walking on a seesawed kind of plank of wood, and then something boosts one of them up into the rafters, and everything is moving, things are flying, and you're being taken. When Elizabeth discovers the cursed pirates, she then gets like pulled into the fray of them working the ship, and she like falls onto this bedsheet that they then throw her up into the air with, and it's like, this is a roller coaster.
It's dynamic.
This is and that's what's so special about it, I think, is that it understands it's adapting a very physical experience usually.
Yeah, which is funny because the ride is famously like non-physical and just like
well, a theme park. It's a movie version of a theme park.
But yeah, and it's still good, Martin Scorsese. But yeah, they after the success of the film, they added Barbossa and Sparrow into the Pirates of the Caribbean ride.
Right.
So now it's like it ends up being a movie tie-in. But you mentioned Barbossa, fucking played by Jeffrey Rush. Oh my god, what the secret sauce in the movie. Kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Which, and not to get too ahead of ourselves, but like the original trilogy of films have great villains, and then not so much in 4 and 5, but we'll get to that. So before we move on, I've got a couple of pieces of randomly placed useless trivia. So Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl is a very long title. How do you reckon this is the longest title we've ever had, or can you think of any that are longer?
I can't think of any that are longer right off the bat. Tell me.
And where do you reckon it would rank in longest titles?
Top 5.
That isn't the top 5? It's third.
Oh.
And you don't want to take a guess?
No, I do not. Just tell me.
Okay, so this is third. Second place is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze.
Wow.
And the longest title we've ever covered is Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah Giant Monsters All Out Attack.
Very, very
Or
nice.
GMK, as it's commonly referred to.
Nice.
It's also worth mentioning as well that it's not specific to our podcast, but this is Pirates of the Caribbean is the 14th highest grossing franchise of all time.
Cool. Are we moving from Curse of the Black Pearl now? Because there's a few things I want to talk about.
Oh, please do.
I want to talk about my favorite joke in the franchise.
Yes.
It's from this film. So it's right at the start of the film. Jack's just escaped, and he finds refuge in the blacksmith shop, and he looks over and he sees the blacksmith there, and he's this old grizzled drunk man who's just like fallen asleep, and he walks over to him and like prods him, tries to see if he's awake, and he doesn't seem to be stirring, and so he turns around, but then he quickly turns back and goes, "Whoa!" to try and wake him up, and God, the choice to say "whoa" instead of "boo" or "hey,"
Yeah.
it's so Johnny Depp and it's so Jack Sparrow, and it gets a crack out of me every time. I just lose it just because it's because like "whoa" means something. You know what I mean? It's like "whoa" is something you say when something's coming towards you, not when you're going towards someone else. And so it's oh my God, I love that joke so much.
I think that brings up an interesting point, and that like why Jack Sparrow works so well in the first film, to a lesser extent the second, to a much lesser extent the third, is that like he's Johnny Depp and Gore Verbinski are like making interesting choices with the character. Like it's like almost every single choice that Jack Sparrow makes or Johnny Depp makes as an actor for bringing Jack Sparrow to life is that it's not the obvious choice. Like Gore Verbinski goes, "Oh, give him a fright," and he thinks, "I'll say whoa." Like, and
that's
it. Because like there's a bit later on in the film where someone and later on in the franchise when someone calls him a filthy pirate, and he just screams after them like,
"No need for name calling."
Yeah, no need for name calling. And it's like, if that was in the first one, he would have been like really offended by it or something like that, or he would have like, looked at himself a little bit and then been like, "Oh yeah," exactly. It's almost doing a caricature of it, and it's like you could just hire any Johnny Depp, Jack Sparrow impersonator.
It's weird seeing the actor who originated a role doing an impression of the character.
Yeah,
further on down the line.
Because there are things like he has his arms up a lot, and it kind of like it kind of makes sense as like a character choice, because if you imagine he spends his whole life at sea, being on flat land would probably feel quite weird for him. Like, when you get off a treadmill and it's kind of like, oh yeah.
I do that a lot.
So it makes sense that he would kind of be like, it's a mix of being drunk as well. But then you see in like the fourth and fifth movie, it's just like, "Oh, Johnny, just put your arms up for this shot," and he's like, "Okay, yeah, I'll just hold them up," and it doesn't feel motivated. It's like the action's motivating the character, not the other way around.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. What do you think of Will and Elizabeth as characters?
Will and Elizabeth, like, they really, really work in this film. And it's like they are kind of just bland. Like there's nothing that much to them. But because obviously the focus is on now, like they're just your typical kind of romantic leads, couple of attractive people. Not that I consider Keira Knightley attractive in the film, because she was 17 when she filmed it.
17-year-olds are ugly, every one of them.
But yeah, it's kind of like it's a very traditional, and it makes sense for the film to just have these kind of characters that they love, and then Jack Sparrow's the call to adventure. They develop them quite well in the second and third film, I think, and Elizabeth, even though she especially even in the first film, she had like quite a lot of her own agency. By the third film, she's like she's a pirate king. Yeah. What do you think of them?
I think there's an argument that Elizabeth is the protagonist of the first film.
Mm-hmm.
I think you maybe look at it and be like, well, she doesn't, she's often saved and rarely saves the day, but a lot of, like, it starts with her. We actually start with Elizabeth when she's a little girl, and it's sort of, a lot of it is her story of overcoming the oppressions of the era towards a woman who's expected to marry a man who's like twice her age, and the star-crossed love of her and Will. And yeah, I think because there's a lot of discourse online about the like early feminist readings of Elizabeth Swann as a character, because she does have a backbone, and she makes decisions which gets her in trouble and gets her out of trouble. Like she tells the pirates that she's a turner. She says parlay to Pintle and Rigetti, who are the kind of Abbott and Costello of the Pirates of the Caribbean
Rosencrantz
universe.
and Guildenstern.
Yeah, there's a bald,
the Timon and Pumbaa,
an old bald chubby one, and a tall skinny one with one eye. I'm sure you know the characters if you've seen the film. And that's where "Hello, Poppet" comes from, which was a big deal when this movie came out. That was weirdly one of the more quoted lines, even though this movie is infinitely quotable in several other areas. And on that, actually, the dialogue in this film, my God, marry me. Marry me, the dialogue in this film. So as I alluded to at the start, and we've talked about this on our Best Lines episode like a year and a half ago, that I love the line, "You'd best start believing in ghost stories, Miss Turner. You're in one."
Yeah, which fun little behind the scenes trivia, behind the scenes of this podcast. That's like an inside joke between me and you, is that just for the last like 3 or 4 years, once every couple of months, we'll just message each other a misquote of that line.
Yeah, I use it at work. I'll be like, "You best start believing you're teaching. You're in a class teaching students." That doesn't make sense. That was a bad.
Yeah, well, I like screwing up the second half of it. Where it's like, "You best start believing in ghost stories, Miss Turner, because this is one." And it's like things that's like it has the exact same meaning. Well, pretty much same amount of words, but it's not as good.
Well, I think "you're in one" is cooler because it's like you. You are the figurehead of the story.
You're part of one.
Yeah, you're part of one. I love that line. I love Barbossa's whole monologue before that is great. He's like, "For too long, I've not felt the blah, blah, blah." Yeah. And he's like, "We are cursed men, Miss Turner." Very cool.
Yeah, and I'm disinclined to acquiesce to your request.
Yeah, very good. When Jack Sparrow first meets Commodore Norrington, who is the older man that wants to marry Elizabeth because he's a fine man and she has become a fine woman, he says everyone listening has heard these lines, but the line, and we talked about this in the Best Quote episode as well, the line, "You are without a doubt the worst pirate I've ever heard of," and Jack replies, "But you have heard of me," is dialogue porn, man. Like, you get these little bite-sized lines of dialogue which tell you 100% of the character, and that's 100% of Jack Sparrow. It's just not about if I'm a good man or a bad man or a successful man. You've heard of me because I'm a fucking pirate, bitch.
And it's also
you have heard of me.
Not only that, but it's also like his arrogance showing through. That it's like, it's like he ends up winning the argument, essentially. Like it's a little change, and that's something that the films kind of lose, especially in 4 and 5, is that like Jack is ingenious in the first film. He seems
He's
aloof,
Bugs Bunny.
he seems like an idiot, but like he plays everyone against each other and comes out on top. And it's like, the first film sort of like shows that, or like kind of implies that this is all planned out and this is all going according to plan, whereas even from like 2 onwards it more plays like everything just happens to work out for him.
He in the 4th one, it almost feels like he's being, or maybe it's the 5th one, it feels like he's drunk the whole time. It feels like that's the character that the directors told him he's drunk the whole movie. Anyway, just quickly, a few other lines I wanna sing out to is is when Jack pulls out the gun with which he's saving the one shot he was given to kill himself. He's saving it to kill Barbossa, and he points it at Will when they first meet to get him out of the way, and he says, "This shot was not meant for you, boy," which is really cool. And during that battle, that immortal battle at the end between Jack and Barbossa, Barbossa says, "You're way off the map, mate. Here there be monsters," and it feels like this isn't really remembered at all from this movie, but that's a fucking cool line. It almost feels like the most articulated to be a cool line that never comes back.
Yeah. Everything Barbossa says is incredible.
Yeah. And the last thing I want to talk about, and we can move on after this, is that the tragedy of Barbossa is so compelling to me. And I talked Harry's a sympathetic character, but like, he basically, there's earlier on in the film, he's like, "The first thing I'm going to do when I break the curse, eat a whole bushel of apples." And he like talks about like, it's very endearing to have a villain that just wants to be alive again.
Yeah.
You know, he's not even willing to kill these people.
Yeah.
Like he just needs their blood. And then during the final battle, Jack's got the medallion. He quickly slices his hand, throws the medallion to Will, who slices his own hand and drops the two medallions back in there. And as he's doing this, Jack shoots Barbossa in the chest. And Barbossa's like, "What, you carry that pistol for 10 years to just waste your shot?" And then like, "He didn't waste it." And he drops the coins back in there. And he looks down at his chest and this blood's coming out from his heart. And he goes, "I feel cold." And dies. And it's like, oh my, it's beautiful.
It's
like,
such a fucking good like acting moment from him.
Yeah,
because it's not only like it's so many things at once. It's like shock, abject terror, relief, and then like acceptance. Like he goes through like the 7 stages of grief, like
5 stages.
Whatever.
Yeah. It's like a it's a melancholy because he's like, "My God, I can feel." And then it's also like, "But I didn't get to experience any of the things that I wanted to experience." And that is why I think the decision to bring Barbossa back in the sequels is a middle finger to the ending of his character in the first film. It is a perfect way to wrap up the character. And the thing with Barbossa is like, they're like, "Oh, but it's Jeffrey Rush. He did such a good performance. We've got to bring him back." And then like, what does he do in the sequels that he returns for? By 5, he's fucking translucent and not just like completely phoning in a performance. And he's barely in too. He's got one line at the end.
Yeah,
so you're left with 3 to say this is the best we've got. And he's not particularly great in that. And this is the crux of this podcast. This is the heart of what I'm going to be trying to argue today. Is these movies needed to be standalone in a macro sense. Yes, they meet characters that turn up in later movies, but they needed to be their own things. And the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise is a franchise that constantly grapples with moving forward and bringing in new elements. It doesn't want to let go of what made the last ones work, and because of that, it becomes a pastiche of its former self with each film.
Which is a great place to move on to the next film. We're going to do something a little bit different here. I want to talk about 2 and 3 together. Like, let's do a plot of the whole thing, because there's going to be things that I can't remember which film they're in, because it's 2 halves of one film. But just talking about following on from what you were saying before about the standalone nature of it. After the first one was a big success, they were like, "Well, we can't really do like a Bond kind of thing because we've got this ensemble cast and it's going to be hard to get everyone together to every couple of years. Like, if it was just Jack Sparrow, it's like, you wait until Johnny Depp's free, make another movie." But so they were like, "Okay, well, let's turn The Curse of the Black Pearl into the first part of a trilogy, and we'll make 2 back to back. We'll get everyone together. We'll do 2 films, and we'll have this nice, neat trilogy." How well they succeeded at that, that's up to you to decide. But I feel
they didn't.
It's a massive failure. The first one is a perfect lightning in a bottle, and then the second one is half of a film, and then the third one is the other half of that film. What's the plot of 2 and 3?
So, on a macro level, Davy Jones, played by Bill Nighy, who's a squid man, and in pirate lore, he's famously the captain of the Flying Dutchman. Who, if you die at sea, you go to Davy Jones's locker. I think that's the mythology.
Davy Jones, the Flying Dutchman, it like takes souls to
Ferries souls to the afterlife.
Ferry soul to the afterlife, and Davy Jones's locker is purgatory. It's between the two.
Right.
And so, but Davy Jones wasn't doing that, so he was cursed, and that's why his whole crew was cursed. Whereas, like, when we see Will in Pirates of the Caribbean 5, who's now the captain of the Flying Dutchman, just like glossing over the entire thing. It's implied that he has been doing that, so that's why he's not as like deformed.
Right. Yeah. Yep. So, essentially, the third film, I couldn't tell you what that one's about.
Yeah.
It's so convoluted. But the overarching plot is that there's Davy Jones fell in love with a woman who broke his heart, and so he put his heart in a chest and buried it somewhere. And if you stab the chest, you take over the role as captain.
The Dutchman's got to have a captain.
Yes. And in the third one, you find out that the woman he fell in love with was Calypso, and as you alluded to, Will actually ends up stabbing the heart. This is such a bad way to recount what both these films are about. Jack, at the end of the second one, Elizabeth seduces Jack into staying aboard the Black Pearl as it's decimated by the Kraken under the control of the Flying Dutchman, and so he dies. This was when I was young. When I first saw these movies, very early high school, this was my first foray, not only into realizing I didn't like a sequel as much as the original. That had never really happened, because the most invested I'd been in a series beforehand was Shrek, and Shrek 2 was great.
Yeah.
So, and so I remember after seeing the second one, and feeling, and like everyone, like Pirates Mania was insatiable. So everyone's like, oh, it's so good, loved it. And I was like, oh yeah. And I remember thinking, like, it's annoying how the first one's standalone and 2 and 3 are going to be so connected. I was like, that's strange. But no one else is validating what I'm saying. So I'm just going to be quiet about it. And then I remember listening to a family friend talk about the second film, and she was like, well, anyway, we all decided that the first one was better. And I was like, yeah. That is the problem.
Yeah.
And then when I went to see the third one, a very similar thing happened where everyone was like, oh, wow, that was so cool. And I was like, that was bad. Why do people like this? Like, that was so bad.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was such a... They're so convoluted, and there's gold in them, their hills. There are some excellent scenes in 2 and 3. But overall, I think the third one is a poor film. I think it is convoluted. It's confusing. I do not understand the plot of the individual plot beats of the third one. There's some cool set pieces and stuff. But the second one, I think, gets a free pass for being not as convoluted. It's like, to me, the third one is like Arrested Development Season 5. Where it's like, it's having to deal with all the confusing story threads set up in season 4, whereas I would rather it just ignore them, be its own thing. And therefore, I guess I find Dead Man's Chest to be like season 4. Yeah.
So to me, so I saw this film in the cinema, and I cannot remember where I saw it, but I know I wasn't in my hometown, and I remember seeing it in like a weird small cinema. But yeah, I went to go see this, and I was like, and I remember kind of thinking like, oh yeah, cool, I guess I'm excited for the next one. And so my kind of issue with the second one, because I go, there's only one good Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and they go, oh, the second one is good. Someone at work the other day said the second one was the best one. And it's like, okay, so there's two ways to look at the second one. Either you look at it on its own in a vacuum. So say someone was like to you, oh, there's this real cool movie, I'll show it to you, and it's Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, and you go, oh, is there any more? And you say, no, this is it. You'd be like, well, that's so incomplete, what a terrible movie. Or you go, now look at the second half of the story, and it's like fucking terrible at World's End. And so it's like, you know, when you go, oh, well, you remove it from 3, it's like, well, then it doesn't work. So it's not a good film. And then it's like, yeah, but all the things that lead into 3 don't work either because 3 ruins it. So it's like, yeah, to me, it doesn't work either way, but I think people try and defend it in those kind of ways. And so for me as well, I saw Pirates of the Caribbean 3 because I remember I was still excited for the third one when it came out. I thought, you know, it was going to fix everything. And I think just generally, I haven't remembered Dead Man's Chest that well. But
yeah, I saw these movies once and then never returned.
Yeah, I went to At World's End opening night with my parents, but had already organised to go the next day with my friends. And so I saw it on opening night, and I was like, "Fuck, this is so bad. This is the worst movie I've ever seen." And then I still had to go see it the next day, so this fucking almost 3-hour movie again, which I hated. And so like for a long time, probably up until we started this podcast, my top 3 worst films I'd ever seen were Pirates of the Caribbean 3, Transformers 2, and Ang Lee's Hulk. Now they don't even fucking register anywhere near the bottom. But yeah, that's kind of
Air Buddies would like a word.
Yeah, Legally Blondes.
Oh my god. Yeah, and well, speaking of Legally Blondes, one of the biggest lessons we learned from why Legally Blondes is a bad movie. This is the 3rd straight-to-DVD Legally Blonde film, for those who aren't keeping up. And we've talked about this a few times, is that great movies are often quite simple. It's the bad movies that are complex.
Yeah.
It's the bad movies that are convoluted and complicated. The ending of Legally Blondes is this indecipherable court case that you're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I don't understand what is going on. That's how I feel about At World's End.
Yeah, and like, I couldn't even recount to you what the court case in Legally Blondes is about.
Yeah.
But like at least in the first one, it ends in a court case as well, but it's like there's a murder. You know, like everyone kind of knows a bit about that, but it's like it's some school bullshit in the third one.
Yeah.
But the second, this Dead Man's Chest was very popular. It was the biggest opening weekend of all time in the US. It was the fastest film to reach $1 billion at the global box office in 63 days. And at the time, it was the 3rd highest grossing film of all time behind Titanic and Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. It's now in 35th place. So there's been a lot that's sort of overtaken it. But,
and what does it have on Rotten Tomatoes?
Yes, what would you guess?
I'd guess like 59. If it's
53.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's not because I think it's a good movie. It's because I expect other people to think it's a good movie.
Yeah. One thing that rewatching these movies, I kind of noticed. So we've talked a lot about doing a listicle at some point or suggesting this to Watch Mojo. Phoebe, if you're listening, don't steal my idea. Our friend Phoebe, who is a host of Watch Mojo. Of like iconic things from a franchise which don't appear in the first film. And so it's things like Eye of the Tiger from Rocky, like synonymous with the franchise, but it's introduced in the third one. Even like I guess Puss in Boots kind of counts. That he's introduced
Merry
in Shrek
Christmas,
2.
You Filthy Animal. It's from Home Alone 2.
Yeah, Jason's hockey mask is it's introduced in the third one. But one thing that's interesting in this film, so one like very important part of the character of Jack Sparrow is that he has this compass that points to whatever you want most. That's actually introduced in the second film. He has the compass in the first film, but it just points to Isla de Muerta, which is where the treasure chest is, which in the second film, it retroactively says that's just like what he wanted most at the time, but in the first film, it implies it just points there.
Right.
Which so it's an interesting thing that like, and like that's one of the cleverest bit of retconning that was done. It like makes this compass like a very important part of the franchise, almost too important by the time we get to 5.
Well, it's almost too important because at no point do they tell you the origin of the compass, and I always thought that was distressing.
No, they do tell you the origin of the compass, and that's changed. Because Tia Dama, who's who revealed to be Calypso, says that she gave it to Jack Sparrow.
Oh, okay.
And then she says like, "Oh, I gave you that compass," which is how someone would say that. Like, that's not the exact. I was like, I started to say that. I was like, I don't remember the exact line, and I was like, this doesn't help at all. Just saying. Yeah.
So Dead Man's Chest, it starts and the characters' worlds as we know it are in disarray. Both Elizabeth and Will are sentenced to be hanged for freeing Jack Sparrow, and Jack Sparrow himself winds up being caught by a tribe of savages who
Cannibals.
are trying to cannibals who are trying to eat him. And a lot of the first part of the movie is Will looking for Jack because Beckett, who's the new villain back at Port Royal, I think he's a Commodore. He's a Commodore.
Yeah.
Commodore Beckett.
Commodore 64.
Wants the compass. So the compass kind of becomes real important, and as you sort of alluded to. And you talked about how the first one is lightning in a bottle. And I don't disagree. But, and I don't quite know if I can explain this, despite how good and perfect that first film is, I feel like creating another real good addition to the series isn't particularly hard.
Yeah. So this is how I feel about Dead Man's Chest and At World's End, is that like I think I read this is that what happened was they were like, we've got too many ideas for one film. And it's like, okay, sure, maybe you did. But what you do then is you cut out the bad ones and you make a good film. Instead, they added worse ideas and beefed it up to two kind of bloated films. Like, just give me the Davy Jones story. And if I can, if we can move on to how fucking good is Davy Jones? Oh my god!
Well, yes,
one of the all-time great film characters.
Absolutely. Just to finish my thought, as I was saying, is that despite how good the first one is, I don't think it was impossible to create a good sequel that lives up to expectations. But it's like, as soon as the second one starts and it's Will Turner looking for Jack, I was like, this is a boring utilization of these characters. But I was going to then say there are some great things in both of these two films, including Davy Jones.
Oh my god. So Davy Jones, and this film won an Oscar for visual effects, 100% deserved. Like, for 2006, he still looks fucking incredible. Like, genuinely, I would say him and Thanos are like the two best fully CG characters put to film. I don't know if fully CG is the right term, because obviously they had like people on set, and I guess Caesar and Planet of the Apes. But it's funny as well that you watch Davy Jones and he looks incredible, but his crew kind of looks shitty, because his crew are all like they're like half merged with like sea monsters. And Tim Burton actually helped out with the designs of the Dutchman crew.
Nice shit.
But apart from Stellan Skarsgård, who plays Bootstrap Bill Turner, Will's dad, his outfit is entirely practical.
Right.
It was going to be enhanced with CG, but they ended up not doing it. But yeah, so it's Bill Nye on set, and for having a giant face covered in tentacles, Bill Nye still comes through so much. And it's amazing. He was asked to do a Dutch accent, and he was like, I can't do Dutch, but I can do Scottish. Would that work? And so he ended up being like, do you fear death?
Do you fear Jack Sparrow?
It's funny because there's the meme of Ed from Ed, Ed and Eddie with an octopus on his head. It says, do you fear death, Jack Sparrow? But he actually never says it to Jack Sparrow. He says it to like three other characters. It's like his catchphrase, but he never says it to Jack. He says it to Will Turner though. But oh my god, like, and again, what a fucking like great sympathetic.
Yep.
Like, he's cursed to be Captain the Dutchman. He's more corrupt in his time, and it's a good like ramping up of the threat of Barbossa from the first one, because it's like you've still got a sympathetic villain, but he's been in his situation for a lot longer and is more corrupt because of that. But yeah, he was just in love. He just is heartbroken.
Oh, it's tragic. It's Shakespearean. It's great. And yeah, you're right that it is 2 for 2 in the movies in terms of great villains. And you look at everything that was added to make these two movies, and the story you've told me of how it came to be, that's insane to me, because what this feels more like is someone wrote a pretty tight script for part 2, and then someone else was like, make this 2 movies.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, we'll add
East Indian
Trading Company in there as like a third or fourth faction that's chasing after everyone. But surely, you want a movie. It's called Dead Man's Chest. It's about, here's the elements you should have in it. You should have Davy Jones. The Kraken can be his Bane. Like Bane from Batman.
Yeah.
And maybe the Calypso stuff, if it works. I personally don't think it works as it is in the film right now. I don't like that. What's the character's name?
Tia Dama.
I don't like that she was Calypso the whole time. Because what's especially weird about these movies being shot back to back is that in part 3, there are retcons, or at least things that, like, you can tell they're like, oh, we're probably going to have to set this incredibly important thread up here in the third chapter, when it's like, you made them at the same time.
Yeah.
Set up the 9 pieces of 8 in Dead Man's Chest. Set up that there are pirate lords and that Jack's one of them and all this sort of thing, because all that stuff is not introduced, I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's certainly not developed, but it's not set up until the start of the third film, and it's like, this feels very cheap to try and do this all here now.
Maybe they're trying to make the transition from 1 to 2 less jarring. They're like,
yeah.
But like, let's make 2 to 3 real jarring again.
So I think you just do the Davy Jones story in the second one, because here's the thing, right? Is that you said that they couldn't do it like how they did Bond, and it's like, okay, I kind of think you should have. I kind of think the villains of each Pirates of the Caribbean movies should be the, like, did you see who they cast in the new Pirates of the Caribbean movie as the villain, as the Bond villain format, but it's almost, okay, you don't want to use the Bond analogy, fine, it's an early 2000s superhero movie.
Yeah.
It's the Spider-Man trilogy, the Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. Think of it like that, because they share a cast, and they have a different villain at the center of the story each time.
Yeah.
That's how you do it, because here's my heart's cry, is that there is so much fucking pirate lore, right?
Yeah.
There's Greek mythology, all of that is pirate lore. There's Dutch mythology, all of that is pirate lore. There's just shit you can make up. That's pirate lore. Pirate lore is so malleable, and 4 out of the 5 films are about undead crew pirates on a ship.
Yeah.
4 of them are. Why are they all about that? Why are they all undead zombie pirates?
Yeah.
In fact, there are technically zombie pirates in the 4th film, which I was going to say is the one that doesn't include that, as mermaids, which we'll get to the 4th one. But they are understated in comparison to the zombie pirates in 1, 2, 3, and 5, which take up the whole story. And so I couldn't disagree with you more, Pirates of the Caribbean creative team. Yes, make them Bond villains. Make them these one-shot, these, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, these compact energy shots of, like, powerhouse performances.
Well, even
in
if
the individual
like
movies.
made it so that you have 1 has got fantastic villain in Barbossa, 2 has got fucking amazing villain in Davy Jones, and even Barbossa comes back at the end, and then the 3rd one put all of the East India Trading Company and stuff in there. It'll be a lot more complicated as a film, like compared to the first time. But you've kind of earned that now, and then make Commodore Beckett the villain. Like,
make him a more interesting character.
Yeah,
but
exactly. But like, so we've seen him, like rise through the background of the films, and actually now become a serious threat by the time we get to the 3rd film.
Great idea.
Yeah.
Like this, that is, my God, that is what they should have done with this series.
Yeah. Thanks for the lead on.
So, sorry, we just did our obligatory stop recording and save everything after an hour, so I had to try and recapture the energy. And maybe I failed, but so did Pirates of the Caribbean as a franchise.
Yeah,
So,
how appropriate. Just a couple of interesting behind the scenes things with
Please.
this. This was the Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest was the first film to use the CG. Well, I just hit my microphone. First film to use the CG Walt Disney logo, the one that travels over the Magic Kingdom rather than just the white on blue thing. So that's interesting. And also the team animating the Kraken, or the Kraken, as it's actually technically supposed to be pronounced, and there's a bit in one of the films, because the guy that plays Gibbs was the first person to say it while filming, and he pronounced it Kraken, and it's supposed to be pronounced Kraken. So they wrote this little scene where they debate the pronunciation of it.
Yeah, between Pintel and
Rigetti.
I know it sounds like spaghetti.
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, so the animation team were told to watch King Kong versus Godzilla for how to animate it because it features a real octopus like crawling over miniatures.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
So I would like to briefly turn to other things I like about 2 and 3 before sharply left turning back into things I hate about 2.
Yay.
So I talked in Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl. One of the best things about it is when it emulates the experience of being at a theme park, being on a roller coaster. And I'm rewatching Dead Man's Chest, watching it for the second time in my life. Apparently, I must have seen it once or twice before. And I'm like, this is bad. This is so boring. And I'm like, they've lost that element of it. They've lost that piece of it that makes it so exciting. And then a scene happens where they're on the island that the chest is on, and Will, Jack, and Norrington get into a sword fight together, and Elizabeth's like, stop fighting, and she pretends to faint, and she doesn't get anyone's attention. And I was like, this is a good scene. And like Pintel and Rigetti are watching it, and they're like, there's that great part where he's like, no one's guarding the chest, anyone could take it, and Rigetti's like, would be awfully tempting. And he does that. That guy's voice, Mackenzie Crook's voice, is like, it's like organically pirate. It's so good. And I was like, this is a cool scene. And then that scene transitions to them. It's probably one of the most famous scenes in the film. Them fighting atop a dislodged water wheel that's moving through the forest. And all of a sudden, I'm like, yes, this is what it's missing.
It's the sequel to the sword fight in the first one with
exactly.
In the blacksmith.
And it goes on way too long, and it's not the only scene in that film which feels like a theme park ride. Earlier, there's a scene where they're trapped in these wooden balls by the cannibals, and they're having to swing it. And again, it's like these moments are there, but the first film almost feels like a non-stop thrill ride, whereas the second one, it doesn't balance those moments of quiet as well.
It's a stop-start thrill ride.
Yeah, so that's cool. In the third film, there's a few things I like. I'm desperately trying to think of them now. I like in concept, I like that Will and Elizabeth get married in the middle of a sword fight.
And it's officiated by Barbosa.
Yeah, that's a fun scene.
I will say, as someone who long claimed At World's End was one of the worst movies he'd ever seen, the scene between Calypso and Davy Jones is fucking beautiful. Watching that, I was like, this should be in a much better scene, in a much better movie. Because he's like, oh, I'm gonna kill her, like, yeah, fuck that, but she broke my heart. And then he sees her, and he falls in love all over
melts,
again. And then she grabs him, and he turns back into Bill Nye, like presumably what he looked like before the curse. And then he like reaches through the bars, and then she turns him back, and now he can't get his claw back out, and so he's stuck like that. But then he can just walk through the bars anyway, because she's like in a prison cell, which is
element. When was that introduced to the mythology?
But it's the second franchise we've covered this year in which a revolutionary CGI character walks through bars.
Very true. Also, I messaged you about this, and you were like, damn, you thought of it. You had also thought of it, but you didn't think I'd work it out. This is our fourth franchise in which Stellan Skarsgård plays a character who has seemingly good intentions, but is also acting against the best interests of the protagonists. I don't want to say all of them because they're kind of spoilers for at least two of the franchises. But the last time we talked about it was Avengers. This happens to him. He's a good guy who gets brainwashed to be evil.
And in this one, he doesn't understand Will's plan and accidentally puts a spanner in the works. And
is also just on the villains team. And actually, he's lost his mind so much in the third one that he's evil for a bit as well. So that's cool. The final fight scene in the third one is this like designed from the ground up to be this epic
Yeah,
battle of epic
it's an
proportions.
Uncharted 3 level.
Yeah, absolutely. And like there's some cool stuff in that with Jack like swinging on ropes between two ships over a giant whirlpool made by Calypso in the ocean. And now let's talk about things I fucking hate about the third one.
Speaking
First
of
all,
Calypso,
Speaking of Calypso, so when you find out, it's not when you find out that she is Calypso, but when she's like unleashed from her.
she's freed from her human form.
Okay, I was like, what even is her story? It's so convoluted. Yeah. She turns into a giant version of herself standing aboard the ship. And what's the name of the actress? It's
Naomi Harris.
Naomi Harris. So giant Naomi Harris standing aboard the ship. And to me, when I first saw this movie, and I messaged you about this and you agreed, it looks stupid. Yeah. Like it's like Princess Leia, Mary Poppins, and The Last Jedi.
100%.
Like, I understand I don't have a problem with the purpose of showing this, but what you're actually showing me is like the stupidest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's for 13 years I haven't remembered anything about the second and third films apart from that, and I was like, and that was enough to be like, this is the worst film I've ever seen.
Yeah, awful. It looks so stupid.
And then she turns into crabs.
Thank God it didn't take too long to get us there. Overall, in the film, there's the third film, there's this thread of Jack Sparrow hallucinating smaller versions of himself and other versions of themselves that talk to him. And it's like, this is the definition of too much of a good thing. Yeah. This is a textbook example of someone not understanding what makes a character compelling and then going in the wrong direction with it. Yeah. And there's a part where he's talking to two versions of himself while he's locked in a cell, and then like a barnacled sea creature version comes out of the wall and starts like itching his brain and stuff. And then Jack leaves the cell, but we stay on his hallucinations, and the one who's stuck in the wall is like, nobody move! I've lost my brain. And it's like, who is seeing this?
Yeah.
These hallucinations these are inside Jack's head, and Jack has run out of the room. This is essentially a Family Guy joke that we're watching right now, you know? So I didn't like that scene. I don't like the little tiny Jacks like hiding in his dreadlocks and things like that.
Yeah, and even when he's in Davy Jones's locker and there's like 30 of them like crewing a ship, I always hated that.
Yeah. Although I do kind of like Davy Jones's locker as a place to visit. But they don't do anything interesting with it. For a film called At World's End, you spend 4 minutes at World's End, and then the rest of the movie's not about that at all. I would like to talk about characters that didn't need to return. The most obvious one being Barbossa, who again I think should have been that single energy shot from the first film, and you remember him as being the one from the first film. Norrington didn't need to return. Commodore Norrington did not need to return.
So he's in the second one, right? And he gets really like run down.
Yeah.
And kind of ends up becoming a pirate for a little bit. I kind of liked that. I thought that was an interesting place. Like, if it was like, you know, we're making a Pirates of the Caribbean sequel, all the main cast is back, including Norrington, you'd be like, what are they going to do with him? It's like, that's a fun place to take his character.
Yes, but it's also a catalyst for all the uninteresting stuff. You know what it should have been? He shouldn't have been in the second one and should have been in the third one.
Yeah, or he should have been in the second one and then that became a more interesting character, and then he becomes the villain in the third one.
Exactly. I go back and forth on Pintel and Righetti. I think they are kind of I can't tell if they are the type of character you have in every film or you only have in one. What do you think?
Nah, they should be in every film. They should have been in 4 and 5, if you ask me. But one thing I really don't like as well is Elizabeth's father just dying off screen.
Oh yeah,
and that because they're coming back from the at World's End essentially, and they're like, all these boats contain dead people, and Elizabeth's like, they can't be dead. That's my dad. And they're like, I guess your dad's dead then.
Yeah, terrible, awful stuff. Okay. There's 2 more things that I want to... There's probably 100 more things, but if I try to remember them, I'll get lost. There's 2 more things I want to complain about. And one is kind of an underlying thing, and one is like a specific plot element that I have very complex and potentially unpopular opinions on. So the reason why the character dynamics work in the first one is that they eventually all very deeply care for each other, especially those three main characters of
The big three.
Jack, Elizabeth, and Will, to the point where Will actually like risks his life and reputation to save Jack from the gallows. And it's like, yep, this is great, because one of the most compelling things a character can be is secretly a good person.
Yeah.
And that is Jack Sparrow. Jack Sparrow's the epitome of that, is that he's a
A
pilfering swine, swashbuckling, bloody, what's another pirate term? Scallywag. He's a scallywag. But deep down, he's a good man, and he actually makes decisions based on how much he cares for Will and Elizabeth.
Yeah.
It's compelling, and in 2 and 3, especially 3, none of the characters like each other.
Yeah.
None of them like each other. Not even Will and Elizabeth like each other that much, because there's like, elements of betrayal, because Will saw Elizabeth kiss Jack Sparrow at the end of the last film, and it's like, this is supposed to be this enduring love story, and they just keep bickering, and I don't like it. Which, another thing I hated, one of the worst additions to the sequels is the sexual tension between Jack Sparrow and Elizabeth. I hate it. I do
Oh
not
my god,
need
yeah,
that.
she's holding the compass and it points at Jack.
I do not need that in my life.
Miss me with that shit.
Their relationship is interesting, being like with that element taken out of it. But
Like, well, that's the thing. Like, that could even work in the first one. That it's like,
well, it does. It's in she tricks him in the first one by like pretending to be drunk enough to maybe kiss him, and that's how she ends up burning all the stuff, all the rum. Why is the rum gone?
But like a little bit more, like you could understand it in the first film of like, oh, I've been so used to this button down life, and here's this kind of like sexy outsider who's whisking me away to adventure. But then they just wait so long to like properly introduce like any kind of curiosity.
It's almost like I'm not interested in Jack's love life to the degree that I want to watch something like this happen.
Yeah.
Anyway, none of the characters like each other, and to the point where they're just genuinely betraying one another. And it's not like it's all part of my plan. Like in the first one, Will thinks Jack has betrayed him, but it ends up being a double cross, and that Jack is actually trying to free him. They are just genuinely selling each other out in the third film. And it ruins it, because it's like, what am I here for? What am I actually wanting these characters to be interacting with each other for? Like, they don't like each other, and it removes this tenderness from it, this complexity from it, that they are very different people who see the good in each other. And it's just a real bummer, and which I would like to now bring up my potentially unpopular opinion. I get, and there are good things that construct this idea. I get the idea that it is romantic in a star-crossed lover's way to make Will the new Davy Jones, and he only gets to see Elizabeth once every 10 years. I get it, it's Shakespearean again. It's the star-crossed lover nature of it. But I think that is way too brutal of a character end to that character arc. I think Jack should have been the new Davy Jones. I know they set it up so that they can't do it because they've set it up, and so you got to subvert expectations. But it is more, to me, Will becoming the next Davy Jones and cursed to be only see Elizabeth once every 10 years is more tragic than it is romantic. It's more of a bummer than it is a cool kind of wrinkle in the story. Yeah. He doesn't deserve it. The character they deserve to be together. And it's such a bummer to see it drawn out like this and ruined like that.
That's interesting, because I genuinely think that the way that story ends with Jack about to stab the heart so that he can be immortal, because he quite likes the idea of being this immortal pirate captain.
Yeah.
And then Davy's like, cool, do it, and he stabs Will. And then so now, Jack is, and because it's the characters liking each other, he gives
supposedly.
He gives up this dream of
Unearned.
being the pirate captain to save Will's life, and so he lifts up Will's hand and stabs the heart for him, so that Will now be immortal, but get to live and get to see Elizabeth once every 10 years. I mean, she just could just come on the ship, I guess, right? But
yeah. She should just do that. That's sort of what I'm saying, is like, I get that's a cool beat that Jack has Will stab the heart. But again, it's like there are plenty of like beats that I like and overall storylines I don't like. For example, when Elizabeth ties Jack to the ship so he gets eaten by the Kraken, and she's like, "I'm not sorry," and he looks at her and goes, "Pirate."
Yeah.
That's a great moment, I think. But I hate the sexual tension between them. I hate that it's a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
I hate that the characters betray each other in such a way. Like, I like that he calls her a pirate because it's like, haha, yeah, man, you are one. Like, you are falling into it. But yeah, so again, I like the beat, but I don't like the overall story that it's making.
Yeah, the way the film ends with Will becoming the captain of the Dutchman, and then so he has kind of his last day on land, presumably spends the entire time making love to Elizabeth.
Oh, well, not presumably, because they have a kid.
I mean, they definitely did it once. I'm saying presumably they spent the entire time doing that.
Oh my god. When they say goodbye to each other and he like kisses her leg, and it's like he definitely was like 20 minutes ago. You can say that's the actors portraying that idea.
Anyway, and then there's all these films have post credit scenes as well. Funnily enough, but the third film has a post credit scene where Elizabeth and a presumably 10, you'd hope 10-year-old, or just like, I guess 9-year-old, son come up and they see the Dutchman reappear on the horizon, knowing that she's in for another day of fucking.
Can I spend some time with Dad, Mum? No.
No. But yeah, this is interesting. I just found this out. It's mentioned in the movie that that true love can free the captain of the Flying Dutchman from his duty, which sparked a fan theory that Will would be set free when Elizabeth awaits him in the post-credit scene, and he comes on land after his first 10-year stint on the Flying Dutchman. And there's a scene that was cut out of the final movie which explicitly states that Davy Jones's curse was prolonged indefinitely because Calypso wasn't waiting for him after 10 years.
Right. So this could have easily been a much happier ending.
Yeah. That he just has to spend 10 years aboard the Flying Dutchman.
I think maybe if we saw them spend more time as a loving couple together, I would be more okay with the 10 years thing. But you essentially see the birth and then subsequent splitting apart of their relationship across.
Well, okay.
Because there's maybe like a year of unaccounted for time between one and two.
Okay, here's what you do. So you make the first film, leave it as is, don't change anything about it, it's perfect. Second film, condense all of the Davy Jones stuff into the second film. It ends with Will stabbing the heart, that bittersweet ending. And you know what? Fuck it. Bring Barbossa back. I don't
want Barbossa back.
But then, so you have the second film as
Jack
him,
should marry them on the ship. It should be Jack that does that, not Barbossa.
Yeah, no, I like that it was Barbossa.
Barbossa died perfectly. He doesn't need to.
Yeah, he did. But I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, then the third film, you have him as captain of the Flying Dutchman, and then, like, we see true love's kiss breaking the curse in the third film. At the end of the third film, like. The subplot of the third film would be trying to break the curse of the Flying Dutchman, and then at the end of it, something doesn't work, but then it's revealed that true love was all he needed. It's cheesy, but it's a Disney movie, and then we have Davy Jones. Because you reveal that Davy Jones Calypso wasn't waiting for him.
Yeah. What does At World's End have on Rotten Tomatoes?
Yeah. What would you guess?
32.
44.
Yeah.
But 72 audience score.
It's because it's the ending.
Same as Dead Man's Chest. Anyway, moving on. After a 4-year hiatus, we got Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides. This one was not directed by Gore Verbinski. It was directed by Rob Marshall, most famous for directing Chicago and 9. Not the cool, creepy stop motion one, the musical with Daniel Day-Lewis.
Right.
So, what's this one about?
So as implied by the ending of At World's End. It's sort of about the search for the Fountain of Youth. This one shakes things up a bit by only really having Jack of the big three return. I mean, Gibbs is there and the crew of the Black Pearl is there.
And Barbossa,
Actually, Barbossa's back. Fuck, I forgot about that.
Yeah, so Sparrow, Gibbs, and Barbossa are the only three that appear in all 5 films.
All right.
It's funny that Gibbs is like there for all
Gibbs.
of them.
C-tier character Gibbs.
Josh Me Gibbs.
Yeah, and they join up with Captain Blackbeard, played by Ian McShane. Is that correct? And his long-lost daughter, Angelica, played by Penelope Cruz. Yep. And they essentially, Jack has been to the Fountain of Youth before, and King George wants the Fountain of Youth, so he sends Barbossa, who's now a privateer, not a pirate, to go search for it. Jack, meanwhile, gets caught up on Blackbeard's ship, and they go to, and he's like their guide to go find the Fountain of Youth, so that Blackbeard may live forever, because there's a prophecy that a one-legged man will kill him, and that one-legged man is Barbossa. This is somewhat buried in the film, but it's set like 20 years after the last film, which would make Jack Sparrow in his 60s, and Barbossa in his...
Well, presumably, we don't know how old he is in the first one, but he's at least...
No, we do. He's born in... I looked this up on the wiki.
Yeah.
Jack Sparrow is explicitly stated at some point to have been born in the year 1700.
Oh, funny.
So he is... If the second one is 1740... If the first one's 1740...
At youngest, he's... so he's 50 in this film. Yeah. Because this film explicitly takes place in 1750.
Does it? Okay. Anyway, so... I guess that's not too old, but Barbossa would be like 4,000 years old. No, Captain Jack's dad, the
Captain T.
Keith Richards, who plays Jack's dad in the third and fourth. Who, by the way, another terrible addition to the series.
Yeah, well, it's a great idea on paper, but he's not. Apparently, he was just got fucking wasted on set.
Right. So just to briefly go back to the third one, when you see Keith Richards as Jack's dad, they ask him a question like how he got out of something, and he goes, "Sea turtles, mate," referring to how Jack Sparrow got off the island he was allegedly stuck on. And it's delivered with such a lack of conviction, like a man who hasn't seen Pirates of the Caribbean, but got told sea turtles are a common theme. And it reminded me of the episode of Extras where Chris Martin guest stars on Ricky Gervais's show and tries to do the catchphrase of, "Are you having a laugh?" And it's like, it's such this obligatory, "We got a guest star, we'll make him say a famous thing." Anyway, so he's in the fourth one as well, briefly. What else do I need to say? Blackbeard's the villain, I guess.
Yeah.
They needed a better villain in this one. However, this film is shockingly inoffensive. I've a few times on the podcast referred to it as my prime example for a reverse Mandela effect, a movie that feels like it should, we all know it exists, but it feels like it doesn't, amplified by the fact that this is the most expensive film ever made.
This is the most to that.
I'm sorry. You go.
Forget you said that. So after the costly production of filming 2 and 3 back to back, Disney decided to scale down the fourth installment, gave it a lower budget. So they filmed on cheaper locations and you did fewer scenes with special effects. However, with a budget of $378.5 million, it's the most expensive film ever made.
It's the most expensive film ever made, and nobody remembers this movie.
Yeah.
That is a fucking tragedy. That is a bad investment.
Yeah.
No one talks about this movie. No one remembers this movie, which is interesting because, first of all, I think it's better than At World's End, and I know you do too, based on your Letterboxd.
Yeah, barely. It's more because it's probably a worse film, like on paper, but it's less offensive, and I like the fact that it's self-contained.
Yeah, it's self-contained, and to me, while this film is by no means, it doesn't even hold a candle to the first film, this is the template with which all the sequels should have been. I kind of wish this was the second Pirates of the Caribbean film, because it's like...
I reckon it would be, like, people wouldn't hate it as much if it was the second one.
I told you I had the perfect metaphor to describe this film in relation to the series, a classic cult pop-churian metaphor. Yeah. This is a PSP movie. Yeah. Right? If the first three are PlayStation 3 movies, this is the one that's like, it's released on the PSP, and it's like technically canon, but you don't really need to see it.
Yeah, it's
like,
the Golden Abyss, which was PS Vita, but
exactly. Uncharted, yeah. Or the Dexter, Jack and Dexter, or the Secret Agent Clank. Like, PSP games were always these like spin-offs that if you remove them from the series still works. Yeah. And so I like a lot, and this is the only one that's not about an undead crew. It's about the Fountain of Youth and mermaids. Why did it take 4 fucking pirate movies to get to mermaids? The first thing I'd think of, if you ask me about like pirate mythology, is mermaids, you know? So I like that mermaids are in it. There's a lot of stuff I don't like it. I'm like, oh yeah, cool, nice.
Yeah, I think a lot of people say this is the worst one, but I think it's inoffensive at best, it's unmemorable at best. Yeah. It's our second franchise this year, which either does or should have starred Sam Claflin, who this was his first film role actually, but he's who I said should have played Kyle Reese at some point because he looks identical to the guy that originally played him. And
he plays a Christian missionary who is brought on the ship to worry about the soul of Blackbeard, and ends up falling in love with the mermaid. And the end of his story is real interesting because he's dying, and then the mermaid's like, I'll kiss you so you can breathe underwater, and then she drags him underwater, and that's the last you ever see of him. And it's kind of like this weirdly like,
did it work?
yeah. I don't know. Here's a problem with these sequels.
Yeah,
there are like 6 personalities shared across the tens of characters. And so here are the 6 personalities of Pirates of the Caribbean characters. You've got the quirky lackey pirate, so like Pintle and Rigetti, they're like, you know, the underdog pirate servants. You've got the charming, dapper young gentleman like Will Turner and the Christian missionary, and then Will's son in the 5th one. You've got the independent woman who's somewhat out of her time, who, you know, doesn't want to be a product of society, like Elizabeth Turner. Angelica is sort of the pirate version of that in the 4th one, and then Kaya Scodelaриa's character in the 5th one is like that. You've got the commanding rough captain of a ship, so Barbossa, Davy Jones, Blackbeard, Salazar, and then you've got Jack, who's the only original unrepeated character in the whole series. Yeah. Like every character fits into that mold. Like every main character.
And they're just like discount versions of.
It sucks. It sucks.
It's interesting.
It's like that. Sorry, it's with the 4th one. It's like they're like, we don't have our hot boy quota. We haven't reached it. We don't have like the hole that Orlando Bloom has left here is too big. We need a new character, and so they put the Christian missionary in there, acting as the Orlando Bloom suppressor, like the equivalent. You know, the substitute. Yeah.
So this movie, the most disappointing thing about this movie to me, Ian McShane is a great actor, and God, we've had some great villains up until this point. Barbossa is fantastic. Davy Jones is the Charlie Swan of this franchise, and Ian McShane, they're just like, oh, we'll put a black beard on you, and he's like, oh, cool. Like, what should I have? Like a fun kind of like, nah, just kind of read your lines.
Yeah,
like you've got the black beard, like. You like, you know, they're trying to come up with the character motivations and like, well, this is all the information we have about him, really. So, it's just it's lazy, and it's like when we're used to these like fun twists, and Salazar in the following film flirts with the idea of being like having really cool quirks, but kind of doesn't. But yeah, so he's just so nothing.
Yeah.
It didn't need to be Ian McShane.
It didn't need to be Ian McShane. again, like, Barbossa's back in this one, and it's like, yeah, first of all, you're playing your luck having Blackbeard and Barbossa share screen time together when they're the same character. And also, just Jeffrey Rush does not look like he wants to be there. Wait, is Judi Dench in this movie?
I don't think so.
It looks exactly... She's in it for half a minute and looks exactly like Judi Dench.
Let me just Control F Judi.
It's during the start when Jack escapes the King George's kitchen or his dining room, and it causes a ruckus in England. And what is maybe the best scene in the movie, and at the start of this movie I was actually kind of like, hey, Jack Sparrow's back, haven't seen him in a couple of movies, but then that quickly dissolves into Johnny Depp clearly too tired to do the rest of the movie.
Yeah. Just trying to get that too tired energy. So here's a fun little piece of behind the scenes trivia. Jerry Bruckheimer gave very strict instructions to the casting directors that actresses auditioning for the mermaid roles must have natural breasts. He explained, I don't think they had breast augmentation in the 1700s, so it's natural for casting people to say, we want real people. That's fun.
Here's another ugliness to that I sort of alluded to before, to the Pirates of the Caribbean sequels, is they're all just too horny. Like, the first one's not that horny, but the second, well, all the sequels, they've just got this very un-Disney-esque horniness to them that I just found really upsetting. And naked mermaids in this, and Jack Sparrow fighting Penelope Cruz, who's dressed up like Jack Sparrow, is very like, this is making me feel weird.
It's a fun character introduction, though, I thought.
That's true.
And also, Pintel and Righetti don't appear in this film. They were supposed to, but Rob Marshall was worried that they'd be cut out of the film, so he didn't bother to fucking put them in it.
Well, his worries came true.
Yeah.
They were literally cut out of the film.
Yeah. Fucking dick. Also, it's interesting to know that this film's based on a book, which is weird. Unrelated to Pirates of the Caribbean. It's just called On Stranger Tides. It's a very influential piece of pirate literature. That's literature pertaining to pirates, not literature that dates back to the age of pirates. But it heavily inspired the Monkey Island series of video games.
That's so
which
cool.
Was being they were actually working on a film of that, and then it was cancelled before it was announced because they found out they were doing Pirates of the Caribbean.
That's so cool because basing it on a book feels like a very mature decision made by filmmakers who are like, let's bring some magic back to the franchise.
Yeah.
But then the actual movie itself is so uninspiring.
Well, apparently they thought of doing part 2 about the Fountain of Youth, and then, while making the second and third film, the screenwriters discovered the book and thought, oh, fuck it, let's just steal this.
It's everything about the sequels are so close.
Yeah.
They're so close to being up there with the first one, but they stumble at such important junctures and fall deep, deep below the depths.
The depths?
The depths.
What do you think this has on Rotten Tomatoes?
The depths of the depths. God, this must be like 20% on Rotten Tomatoes.
33.
Do you want to know how I first saw this film?
How?
It was a cam rip. It's the only other time I've seen it as well. So I felt like I owed it to Pirates of the Caribbean to watch the fourth one because this came out in 2011. So by this point, I was an out and proud denier of the second two films. Like I was like, the sequels suck, and he was like, no, they're good, and I was like, nah. And so this one came out, and I was like, there is no reason this needs to be bad. Like, this could be the second best one.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to go see it. I think I couldn't find anyone to go with me, and I was 18 and had no money, so I was like, fuck it, I'll just download it. And I downloaded a cam rip of it and watched it and was like, yeah, it's better than the second one, which I now wouldn't say, but it is better than the third one.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's just more like, I don't know, it's more inoffensive.
The fact that we don't know what to say about it is testament to
like
how...
it really is. Like it's but yeah, there's a lot of things like for being the most expensive film ever made, it looks a lot cheaper than like. It's so weird how it costs that much.
Yeah,
can't believe it. I'm in disbelief. Anyway, do you want us to move on to the fifth one?
It is Judi Dench.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
Well, because didn't you say you were out of the room when you heard it, and you just heard her voice?
I wasn't out of the room. I was in the kitchen, which, is attached
Judi
to the
Dench
lounge.
to make out with Johnny Depp in Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides.
I remember hearing that.
You watch the scene and it's very clearly her.
Yeah.
But your lack of assurance made me wonder.
Wait, let me just pull it up.
This film
I'm watching a camera. Oh, yeah, that's very clearly Judy.
Full circle. This film has a post-credit scene where Johnny Depp, Jack Sparrow, leaves Angelica on an island at the end of the film, which I was like, is this the emotional crescendo of this character arc? Is that he deserts her? I feel like they were going to get together. The whole film builds up how she's the first woman he's ever had feelings for, and yada yada yada.
Yeah.
And it's this doomed love story, and then he just leaves her on an island because she's too much trouble. And I was like, this doesn't feel like where this character plot, these two characters should end. But anyway, she's left on the island, and then after the credits, a previously established voodoo doll of Jack Sparrow washes ashore, and she picks it up and sort of grins menacingly, never to be revisited in the future films, or film, I should say.
Yeah, I was very tempted to make that my continue the franchise, to carry on with that. And maybe it could fit into my continue the franchise some way, but we'll get to that. But first off, let's continue the franchise by going on to the fifth film, Dead Men Tell No Tales, which came out in 2017. This one was directed by a couple of Norwegian directors. Joachim Ronning and Espen Sandberg.
Wow.
What's this one about?
What is this one about? This one is about... Fuck. Oh, it's about Poseidon's trident, or Neptune's trident?
I thought, Poseidon, isn't it?
Yeah. Poseidon's trident is the MacGuffin, and Jack is being pursued by Captain Salazar, who's an undead sailor who is cursed somehow. He's played by Javier Bardem in a wasted role where he is just after Jack. He just hates Jack Sparrow.
Yeah, because
and basically, if
he
you
blames him for being undead, even though it was kind of his fault.
Yeah. And so Jack is joined by Captain Barbosa, who shows up and with a very happy to be there Jeffrey Rush, and Will Turner's son, who wants to free Will from the Flying Dutchman curse. His name's Henry, and a woman named Karina, who is very close to Corona, Richard.
Oh no!
Who is a astronomer. A female astronomer who everyone thinks is a witch. She's played by Kaya Scott Ilario, and she ends up being Barbosa's daughter, plot twist, which we worked out means that she would have had to have been conceived between the third and fourth films, which makes less sense because when Jack and Barbosa see each other in the fourth film, it heavily implies they haven't seen each other since Barbosa stole the Black Pearl at the end of the third movie. But Jack knows that. Jack knows who Karina's mother would be. It's because we were trying to work it out. We were like, she's either the same age as Henry Turner,
she's
or
either
she's like
5 or 40.
yeah. There's no other possibilities here.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit of a fuck up of the timeline. But what else are you going to do in the fifth film in a series as undead as the pirates involved?
Yeah, we see a flashback to a young Johnny Depp. Who looks horrible. He looks bad, and he starts talking, and it's even worse. But him screwing over Salazar and leading him into the Devil's Triangle. And so now they're ghost pirates this time. So they're not zombie pirates. It's a twist on a classic formula. But yeah, we also see how Jack got the compass, and then at the start of the film, he trades it for some rum, and he's quote unquote betrayed the compass, which reveals his location to Salazar. And like,
God.
We saw him get the compass, and like, it's like, oh, he gave away the compass, but he gives it away in literally every film. He's like, here, take this, and then I'll meet you later. But I guess that's not like, betraying her or whatever.
I'm
So yeah, you mentioned it that it's
Yep.
Karina is revealed to be Barbossa's daughter, and then at the end of the film, they're like being lifted out of the final battle, and Salazar is climbing up after them. He's going to kill Karina, and Barbossa sacrifices himself to save his daughter, making this our second franchise to feature a May 2017 Disney film in which a character who hadn't been thought of as another character's father up until the end of the film reveals that they were in fact their daddy all along and sacrifices themselves for their child after Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
Yeah, so it's got it's got two plot twists from the first page of the big book of plot twist conventions in this film, where one character ends up being related to another character, and then another character killed off. A character who's already been killed off, actually.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that a character being killed off isn't necessarily a plot twist. It's a spoiler.
Yeah, maybe that's what I meant. But I'm so sick of the heroes dying, or the main characters dying in the series.
Well, that's the thing in this film, is that like the Will, Jack, and Barbossa have all died at least once and just come back. And so it's like death means nothing in this franchise. So see you in number 6, Barbossa.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't know if Jeffrey Rush is getting any work these days, considering some allegations which came out about him
really?
very recently. But the same could be said about Johnny Depp.
Yeah, should we talk about
a complicated situation?
Yeah, should we talk about Johnny Depp, because by this this kind of had a bit of a troubled production for Johnny Depp. There was an article that was written when someone visited the set and kind of painted a very dark portrait of Johnny Depp, who is, he was getting his lines fed to him in an earpiece. He would show up very, very late to see. He was going through, starting to go through a divorce at the time. And they eventually had to hire a PA who was just their job to like sit outside Depp's house and wait for the lights to come on and be like, he's awake, we can like fucking get him. And he's definitely got like troubles with alcohol and things like that. And there's obviously the whole thing that's going on. There's a court case going on at the moment with Amber Heard. And it's very sad. I don't know, like Johnny Depp, it's a dicey subject, because there is accusations that he's abusive, but then there's accusations with a lot more evidence that Amber Heard is abusive, and maybe he retaliated in some way. But the evidence is pretty damning that Amber Heard's the kind of aggressor. And it was, for a while, there was a very much like cancel Johnny Depp kind of thing, but I have a little bit of sympathy for him, and he's in the situation where it's like, I just hope he can like get the help he needs before like he needs to go to rehab, and because he is genuinely a fantastic actor, and like the first performance of Jack Sparrow is amazing. Maybe he just doesn't care anymore. He's kind of turning into a bit of Marlon Brando, who actually, I think Johnny Depp's only film he's directed starred Marlon Brando, and apparently was fucking terrible. Or vice versa. Maybe it's Marlon Brando's director. Anyway, it's I would love to see Johnny kind of return to form a bit, but yeah. And Amber Heard, oh god, just get out of Hollywood, you suck. You fucking suck.
And I mean, all of that is relevant to Dead Men Tell No Tales.
Yeah.
Because his performance as Jack Sparrow in this has all the conviction that I'm sure he had when he dressed up as Jack Sparrow to visit Make-A-Wish Foundation kids in the hospital.
Which is an amazing thing that he does. He famously travels everywhere with the Jack Sparrow outfit so he can pop into children's hospitals.
Which is a nice thing to do, but that's what it feels like this is. He's playing the character as if he doesn't need to try very hard, because
the kids are just going to die anyway, so who cares?
No, I didn't mean that. I imagine he's not like going for his second Oscar nomination as the character. Because it's the kids.
It's and there was also that. Do you remember that? Because this film was filmed in Australia. I think it's the biggest production ever been brought to Australia, but it's There was that famous case of where they brought their dogs into the country and didn't declare them. And Australia has like very, very strict biosecurity laws. And it's now just in the last month or so in the court case, it's come out that like Amber Heard's former assistant is like, I told her so many fucking times it's illegal to bring your dogs to Australia, and she was just like, fuck you. And didn't, and just did it. So then they got into trouble.
She was like, I Amber Heard you the first time.
And yeah, they brought it in, and then they released this video of the two of them being like, Australia has very like sensitive wild, and it's real weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very weird indeed. So
the film.
One thing I like about this film is there's kind of a fun sequence where Jack Sparrow is in a guillotine and the guillotine platform breaks, and the shot is that the camera's like attached to the base of the guillotine, and you see him flip up. It's upside down, and the blade get like sort of like ebbing and flowing back and forth, and nearly
which isn't
lopping
how
his head off.
centripetal force works, but it's
Is
a
it
fun
not?
scene.
Interesting. I thought that I remember seeing, because I saw this at the movies.
Yeah, I remember we were living together at the time, and I remember you being real excited for it.
We'll talk more about that in just a second. I don't know. It's a cool scene that feels Pirates of the Caribbean.
It would fit in like the second one, not in the first one.
No, yeah. So that's cool. But yeah, so I was very excited for this film because much like the fourth film, I was like, there is no reason this can't be a good movie.
Yeah, and this was kind of like advertised as being like the return to form. Will's back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's sort of back. He's barely back.
Yeah, well, it was advertised like that.
And I remember thinking like, well, look, it's not like Fantastic Beasts, where the story, another forgotten Johnny Depp performance. It's not like Fantastic Beasts where the characters are and the story is ruined. The story is rotten, and the story is so bad that I don't actually want to see it continue. Pirates of the Caribbean, the next one could be the best one.
Yeah.
You know? Because they haven't rotted the story components. And so I went in with that attitude, and I remember I saw it with my friend Adam, and after it finished, he was just like, man, why did you make me see this movie? Because I'm sorry to say, this is the worst one. It is. It's got all the lack of effort of On Stranger Tides with all the offensive story ideas of At World's End. It's so bad and lame. I think the whole Barbossa's daughter thing is so unnecessary.
Yeah, I think I'm while this is the worst one, I'm more offended by the third one, I think. Because this one is like, obviously it was going to be bad. No offense.
No, I knew it would be bad. I was just saying.
Deep down.
I hoped it wouldn't be.
But yeah, like it brings back Will, and an attempt to be like, oh, we're bringing back the big guns, because he declined to return for the fourth one, and then between the fourth and fifth one was like, oh yeah, it'd be kind of cool to come back and play like a bit more of like a villainous character, because he's only ever played like Pretty Boys, and so they're, oh yeah, cool, we'll bring you back, and then like literally the opening scene is his very young son. I think it's set before the post-credit scene of the third one.
No, they've met before, though. They talk to each other like they've met before. I think it must be like a year later after that post-credit.
Anyway, yeah, so he... and he's like, oh, I'm going to free your dad. And he's like, get out of here. And it's like, oh my God, are you trying to be threatening, Orlando Bloom? And then, he doesn't appear again until right at the end, because... you have to divide the trident, and it will lift every curse, and that's literally just like swing a sword at it, not that hard, and it's like every single curse across the entire ocean is broken, and then so Will appears at the very end.
Do you think Barbossa's pissed off that he went to try and like find 882 pieces of Aztec gold that they spent when he could have just destroyed the trident the whole time?
Yeah. It's such a like Doctor Who does this all the time, but it's like it does the thing of like I just when I used to watch it, I remember there being like every Dalek across every like all of space time is destroyed, like in like present and past and future, and then it's like, oh, we found some that exist outside of time, and it's like, like each person wants to make it real final, and then the next person just has to undo that.
It's like coronavirus slipping back into the country.
Yeah.
Once one dialect from outside of time and space gets in, they just spread like wildfire, and then you've got to lock down the whole country again.
Yeah, do you want to talk about the post-credit scene of this film?
Oh my god, it is the worst post-credit scene I've ever seen, because...
Is it worse than Final Do It Myself from Age of Ultron?
No, but Final Do It Myself feels like it's saying something, right? This is from Avengers Age of Ultron. The thing with the MCU post-credit scenes is they more or less follow them all up. But twice now, 2 movies in a row, we've seen yet to be followed up threads that I don't mean to presume, but I don't think they're going to get followed up. But the post-credit scene of Dead Men Tell No Tales emphasizes everything wrong with the series, in my opinion. So, Keira Knightley and Orlando Bloom have reunited. She has no lines, which I'm presuming means she was cheaper than, than if she did have lines.
They shot in one day. They relocated to London and shot all the scenes in one day.
Well, she's clearly standing against a backdrop and not the actual Port Royal. And the post-credit scene is Will and Elizabeth in bed together, they're not like facing each other. They've first night together.
It's just sleeping, dude. Like
in 10 years. I don't know. It doesn't.
You roll around in your sleep.
I'd expect they'd be up all night fucking, dude.
Yeah, maybe it's not the first night.
Maybe it's not the first night. And then the door
it comes back after 10 years and he's like, oh, not tonight. I'm tired.
I'm tired. The door creaks open and a shadow walks into the room, and it's very, very clearly the shadow of Davy Jones.
Yeah.
Right?
And then his claw is revealed.
Yeah, his claw strikes up, it's sort of like Jason Voorhees' machete, and Will wakes up with a start only to find no one's there, and then the camera slowly pans down to some like cockle shells at the foot of the bed, implying maybe he was there.
Yeah.
This is why it sucks, because first of all, it's saying maybe it was a dream. Whatever you want. What would you prefer? Do you want us to commit to this? Because we left it ambiguous so we don't have to commit to it. But also above that, it's like, I do not want to see Davy Jones again. The character was wrapped up. What is the point in these epic climaxes to these films? Same with Barbossa coming back. If you're just going to be like, but they are essentially immortal, they're going to come back. He's the 5th character, main character to come back, essentially. And it's like, not only do I not want Davy Jones to come back, just like I didn't want Barbossa to come back, and also, why? Why is he back? What? He died. The whole point of the story was that he died. But also, it once again speaks to what I was talking about before of the Pirates of the Caribbean series' unwillingness to move on and incorporate new elements. They are so obsessed with bringing in old stuff, with being like, remember this? This was great. Look, now Will and Elizabeth are back. Maybe we could bring Davy Jones back as well. And, sorry for killing off Barbossa, we can just bring him back as well. Like, it gives me no confidence that Pirates of the Caribbean 6, as is projected, I'm assuming it's going to be something different now, we'll get to that later. But as it is projected in this film, it's like I have no confidence that 6 is going to be in any way this unique, original return to form. It sounds like you're just trying to once again play with the toys you already have. You're remixing the second 2 films, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
It's horrible.
Yeah. And also, funnily enough, so Bill Nighy found out that he was in the 5th film from a cab driver who was like, oh, so you're going to be in the next one? And he's like, oh, I don't know if they're making a next one. And he goes, oh, you're in the last one. And he's like, what?
Well, I mean, he doesn't say anything, and you don't see his face.
So it's like, it's one of those things they never use his likeness, so they don't have to get any permission.
It is non-committal.
Yeah.
It is someone who's too afraid to say they don't want to go on a date with you, so they go on a date with you. You're right.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, maybe this thing you like is back. There's never been a franchise more out of touch with what it should do. Like, movies and especially sequels sometimes have to make hard decisions and do things that maybe aren't the obvious popular choice. Pirates of the Caribbean has no interest in doing that.
Yeah, and so you talked about like the character archetypes that are used in every film. The breeders in this film, the straight couple, the attractive straight couple, they're just boring. It's like, again, it's like, you could have cast some, like, I mean, I'm sure they did think they were casting this like young up and comer, but just some.
Oh, they're just Will and Elizabeth 2.0. You could. There's literally nothing that did, maybe because she's an astronomer, but that doesn't. I don't know. It's not good enough.
Yeah. But I will
That's
say
not good enough. That's not good enough. Anybody? Shout out to all my stands of the Why Is the Rum Gone remix, which I've seen more than any of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
I've never seen it.
You've never seen it?
Nah. It's like they've taken the Hobbit to Isengard and just. It's
exactly like they've taken the Hobbits to Isengard.
Anyway,
so when I messaged you the other day and I said, "Why is the rum gone? Why is the rum gone?" You didn't know what I was referencing.
Yeah, I was like, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
Oh, that's one of the lines. It's a great remix.
Well, you mentioned it on the Discord, and then someone else talked about it. I figured that I put two and two together and figured it was another remix like they're taking the Hobbit to Isengard. Anyway, what I was saying is, Salazar in this film ends up just being like kind of a boring villain. He's like
waste of Javier Bardem.
Kind of a cool
Jesus Christ.
design that he's got like this kind of cracking face, and his hair looks like it's constantly underwater. Mm-hmm. So I watched the trailer for this film, and there's the bit because his whole thing is like he kills everyone but keeps one person alive to tell the tale. Because dead men tell no tales. And he leaves Will's son alive. And there's the bit, and it's in the trailer where he's like, "Can you get a message to Jack Sparrow for me?" And he's like, and he's like, "Would you do that, please?" And it's like, and in the trailer, I remember thinking like, that's a cool characterization, like the way
a polite villain.
It's cute the way he says please, like it's very cordial and earnest, and then like if they just followed through with that and made the character's like entire characterization based around that delivery, that could have been great, but instead they just go, "Oh yeah, just you're a Spanish pirate." Yeah,
they didn't even say just be Silver from Skyfall as a pirate.
Yeah,
because that's essentially you're describing Silver.
Yeah,
somewhat, yeah, man, Javier Bardem. It's one of those things where it's like Javier Bardem in a Pirates of the Caribbean movie. Fuck yeah,
yeah,
and then it's like, whoop, nope. Paul McCartney is also in this film.
Yeah, because they couldn't get Keith Richards
as Jack's uncle.
Yeah,
Uncle Jack, also named Jack. The third character in the series named Jack because they named the monkey Jack.
Dumb IMDb trivia.
Oh.
Yeah. So Captain Salazar, Javier Bardem, is the first supernatural villain of the Pirates film franchise who isn't a pirate. Corrections. Captain Salazar is the second supernatural villain of the Pirates franchise who isn't a pirate. Davy Jones, the villain from the second and third installation of the franchise, is the captain of a haunted ghost ship who abandoned his duty as a guide for the lost souls, but technically is not a pirate. Double correction. Davy Jones told the Brethren pirate court how to imprison Calypso. It is reasonable to presume he was a pirate when he fell in love with her.
Fucking hell. Just
write one.
No, delete them all because they cancel each other out.
And also, Bruce Spence has been in more than one franchise: Mad Max, The Matrix, Star Wars, and The Lord of the Rings. It's funny that it doesn't mention Pirates of the Caribbean. I did look it up and he is in it. But it's just like...
oh my God. That. There's some dumb IMDb trivia, bro.
Yeah. Also, I had a dumb IMDb. Oh, this is for the third film, sorry. Jack Sparrow, Johnny Depp's character, waits a whole 33 minutes before making his on-screen presence. I love the idea that after 3 films, you have to be like, "Oh, which one's Jack Sparrow?"
yeah. And that he's waiting, like it's a stage play. Just waiting backstage.
So, there was original script for this film, which was written by the guys that wrote the first 3, or one of them at least,
really?
that ended up being thrown out. And his theory is that because it had a female villain, and he thought it would be redundant with Dark Shadows, which has a female villain and also stars Johnny Depp.
Oh my God. A female villain is not a...
Yeah.
It's not a trope. It's just a gender of a character. That's so stupid. It does feel like at this point we need a female villain.
Yeah, 100%. It's like Marvel films.
Yeah, exactly.
Alrighty, so I guess that's all 5 films. How would you rank them?
Okay, so obviously the third one's the best one.
Yeah.
No, look,
Tied with 5.
I would want. In my heart, I want to comically rank them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
But I think I would say it's probably 1, 2, 4, 3, 5.
Yeah.
The second one has enough in it for me to be like, this is all right. The third one's really confusing, and the fourth one.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The first one, the second one is like heavily enough Davy Jones that I'm like, fuck yes, daddy, give me more.
Yeah.
But the third one is like, oh, when's he coming back?
Yeah, exactly. And also, I don't like in the third one how like he's under the command of the East India Trading Company.
Yeah.
Like it feels weird to see like characters that you would think don't believe in ghost stories. They better start, but interacting with a squid man, it's like
Yeah.
they should be terrified to see these characters, but they all just kind of like, oh yep.
But so the franchise as a whole.
What do you think? What is your diagnosis, Doctor?
Pirates of the Caribbean is possibly one of the most frustrating and infuriating franchises we've ever watched. And you see this at the start, but it actually genuinely makes me sad. Like the first
it's
film
unacceptable.
is so fucking good. It's unacceptably good.
It's
on the Discord,
good.
I said it was offensively good. Where it's like it is. It's that good. Like it genuinely is a perfect blockbuster. It has a phenomenal performance in it from Jack Sparrow, Johnny Depp as Jack Sparrow. That has now kids don't know how good that was and what a revelation that was at the time. But yeah, my God, what a promise.
2 and 3 is like TV show plotting. It's real weird. It feels like this. It feels very Game of Thronesian, like all the complicated pieces moving together,
splitting characters up and shit like that.
Yeah. It's like this is how you write a TV show, and I don't want it to be a TV show.
Yeah.
So I'm not calling for that. That's not my continue the franchise. But look, man, I love the first one so much that when we rank this franchise later on, like instinctively I'm going to be like, well, it'll be pretty high because it's such a good No, it's not. It's actually a garbage franchise.
That's the thing. Yeah, like I still struggle with the fact that like, yeah, this sucks, but because like the first one is just that good.
Yeah, it's a tragedy, man. It's a pirate tragedy.
I thought my life was a comedy, but it's a tragedy.
All I have are negative thoughts about the Pirates of the Caribbean. Yeah, man.
Speaking of Letterboxd, you and I hilariously gave the same ratings to all the films.
The first 3 were genuine, and then the first 2 were genuine, and then for the last 3, I was like, I'll just do this. Like, I don't disagree, but it's like, I rated Dead Men Tell No Tales 1 star because you did, and I was like, I very rarely rate like a expensive blockbuster 1 star, but I'm gonna have to make an exception in this case. Like 1 star and half star are usually reserved for either like Super Buddies or the occasional Doolittle or Scoob.
Yeah,
like
all right, we talk about titles a lot on this podcast, and there's a big title thing that we've ignored up until now. That is that Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Men Tell No Tales. You might have been listening to this whole podcast for the last hour or so, being like, what? There's one I missed? If you live in certain regions, you might know the 5th film as Salazar's Revenge. What do you think of the titles, and what do you think of the alternate title for number 5?
So, we've talked a bit before about how
titles.
I'm such a titly boy. And in the past, I think I've cited the Fast and the Furious titles and the Final Destination titles as being the franchise with titles so bad and so frustrating that that's what sparked me caring about titles. Right. But, and I don't bring this up very often because it's this is where you go, I can understand, I'm sure people can understand why I find it frustrating that Final Destination 4 is called The Final Destination, and then 5 is called Final Destination 5.
And then we're getting a sixth one as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure I don't have to explain the why Fast and Furious frustrates me either. But when I was younger and the only Pirates of the Caribbean movies were 1, 2, and 3, I was infinitely frustrated that the first one has like this grandiose title and then the second and third are both 3-word titles. I was so frustrated by that. And then I find they're making a fourth one and I'm like, oh great, they'll be able to break the pattern. And then the fourth one's called On Stranger Tides, which now, knowing that it's based on a book, would ironically probably be the one of the 3-word titles I wouldn't want to change because I think it's a cool title. And then when Dead Men Tell No Tales came out, I was like, well, it's kind of a cliche pirate expression. It's hardly as original as the last ones, but at least it's longer. At least it breaks.
And it is a reference specifically to the ride as well.
True. There you go. But in just talking to you about this over the week and thinking about it recently, I actually think the solution is not to extend the titles of the 3-word ones. It's more to take the 2 that aren't 3 words and shorten them, because Pirates of the Caribbean, as we discussed, is already such a long title that you probably don't need The Curse of the Black Pearl or the Dead Men Tell No Tales.
Yeah, they deliberately added The Curse of the Black Pearl to like set it up as a franchise.
So my pitch would be either the first one should either be called Pirates of the Caribbean, Black Pearl's Curse, or just the Black Pearl.
Or just Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yep, yeah, that'll be all right too. Though I kind of do like the consistency of them all having subtitles. And then the fifth one should just be Tell No Tales.
Yeah, I really like Tell No Tales.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah, I prefer just the Black Pearl to Black Pearl's Curse, or just Pirates of the Caribbean. But I guess because then if you call it Black Pearl's Curse, then you set up like you've got something, like the first 3 are all 2 words, apostrophe.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I know. And in terms of Salazar's Revenge, maybe you could call it Salazar's Wacky Revenge. Salazar's Big Revenge.
Salazar? Silver?
I don't think either Salazar's Revenge or Dead Men Tell No Tales are good titles. Dead Men Tell No Tales feels like you could almost call any of them that because it's just a pirate expression. And Salazar's Revenge is like, who's Salazar?
That's the thing. I like. Part of me is almost like I would rather that they established Salazar in an earlier film, or just retroactively was like, oh, this person that Jack screwed over in the background was Salazar. Like,
it's the same as Cats and Dogs 2, The Revenge of Kitty Galore.
Yeah.
Who's Kitty Galore?
Exact same.
It's exactly the same. Well, Revenge of Kitty Galore is probably better than Dead Men Tell No Tales.
Probably ranked higher.
But I mean, Pirates of the Caribbean is a great franchise title. Yeah. For continue the franchise, did you look into any of the like extended media?
Like actually read it or anything, or
do you like? Because there's some interesting titles to mine from there as well.
Oh yeah, do you know them?
Oh, there's one that's like Armada of the Damned.
Oh, what's that?
Which was a cancelled video game.
Oh.
And there's also another video game called The Legend of Jack Sparrow. Which, do you know about The Legend of Jack Sparrow?
I like the legend or the
the game. It was a PS2 game. So it came out after Dead Man's Chest, but it's set between Black Pearl and Dead Man's Chest. And it's about Jack and Will and Elizabeth getting caught trying to steal something. And so they get tied up on the gallows, and then Jack tells them the stories from his life that you then play as. But in the stories, you can also play as Will or Elizabeth. And apparently they're like, we weren't there, Jack. We don't know what you're talking about. So you like play him escaping the island on the backs of sea turtles and stuff. Apparently it's not very good, but it
says the game includes action, puzzles, and humorous cutscenes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's not rated very well.
Johnny Depp plays Jack Sparrow.
Continue the franchise. There is a bunch of video games. There's a Lego video game.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Oh, Armada of the Damned. This looks cool. I'm just looking at it now.
There's a cancelled video game set in the same universe, which wouldn't have any of the characters involved, but you'd play an undead pirate
Yeah.
And it was be like an open world,
Similar
kind
to
of thing.
Assassin's Creed kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then they ended up making Black Flag, which is a pirate Assassin's Creed anyway. So where were we? Pirates of the Caribbean. So there's also a short film that it's called Tales of the Code Wedlocked, and it's a bonus feature on the number 4 DVD, and it's it's featured in the like box set they released, the 15 disc 3D Blu-ray, 2D Blu-ray, DVD plus digital copy box set.
No, thank you.
So it's set just before the first film, and it's a prequel as to why his little boat, the Jollymon, was seen sinking at the beginning of the first film.
One of the greatest character introductions of all time.
It actually genuinely fucking is. Like,
which needs no context, which sounds like this short film provides.
Yeah. And it's also it's the wenches that he meets later on. I think it sets up why they're angry with him.
Oh my god, we do not need this exposition.
But yeah, oh my god, we didn't even talk about that. But fuck, the Jack Sparrow on this tiny little dinghy, like trying to get water out as it sinks, and then standing atop the mast as it slowly sinks, and then just walking onto the pier. It's phenomenal.
Again, because it tells you everything about the character. It's sheer confidence, and
he still
confidence
carries
in the face
himself. Of adversity.
Yeah. He still acts like he's cool. Even though he's on a sinking ship.
Okay, so in terms of new films, in October 2018, it was reported that Disney had been looking for ways to reboot the franchise. They brought on Deadpool writers Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick. Producer Jerry Bruckheimer was also expected to return. In January 2019, it was said that Disney could save up to $90 million by excluding debt from future installments, although not confirming nor denying the presence of Captain Jack Sparrow. I remember hearing that he'd like officially retired from the role, but it might have just been that. That it's like Disney would save money.
Just probably shouldn't have him in the next one anyway.
Yeah.
Find something else. You've got to move on. You've got to find something else that's as compelling as Captain Jack Sparrow. That and heed my words, that isn't just a clone of him.
Yeah.
Find a different way to make an interesting character.
There is a 6th film in the works. Craig Mazin is writing, who wrote the phenomenal Chernobyl and is also writing the Last of Us TV series. So that's but then you look at his film work and it's like, Scary Movie and and the Hangover sequels. But but interesting to see what he can do with it now that he's a good writer. But Kaya Scodelario is contracted to return for it. She confirmed that she's contracted for signed a contract for a trilogy. Just like she might not end up being in it, but if she has to do it if they write a character for her.
I think cut your losses.
Yeah, exactly.
Include nothing from the other movies.
But that's just how movie contracts work for franchises. Yeah. Ronning, who was one of the directors of the 5th film, is returning to direct. And it was confirmed recently that Karen Gillan, Daisy Ridley, and Emma Watson are being eyed for the female lead, and Bruckheimer is unsure of Depp's role in the film. It's funny, Karen, so it's like Karen Gillan, this like amazing fun. She's like proven herself in action roles in the Jumanji sequels, or 2 planks of wood. Two like actors who forced into the spotlight, leading these franchises, who are not charismatic.
I grossly misunderstood what this film was supposed to be.
Yeah,
I thought this was a reboot starring Karen Gillan as a pirate, written by Craig Mazin, and I was like, hell yeah, I want that.
Yeah. No,
Karen Gillan
it still could be there, but we just don't know enough about it. But yeah, I genuinely would love to see Karen Gillan. I would not like to see Daisy Ridley or Emma Watson take on this franchise.
No. Well, we've already seen Daisy Ridley in every other female character that's been in this film series. Daisy Ridley is from the Keira Knightley school of acting. They have the exact same cadence in their voice. Daisy Ridley is so on brand for this franchise that you shouldn't cast her.
Yeah.
You would have nothing. You wouldn't feel original at all. Whereas Karen Gillan's got her own kind of brand that would be cool to see brought to the story.
But also, a couple of months ago, it was announced that a female-led spin-off was being developed. Margot Robbie is attached to star, and Christina Hodson is writing it, who wrote the fantastic Bumblebee and the not very fantastic Birds of Prey.
I'm happy with Birds of Prey. I think that... I think it's certainly not as good as Pirates of the Caribbean, so I'm not.
Yeah, I don't know. I worry with this film that it's going to be like a Margot Robbie vehicle to play a wacky character, which is just going to and it's going to fail because it's going to very transparently just be like it's female Jack Sparrow.
Maybe, and that would suck.
Yeah, and they would say like fine, and you know, like why do these need to be two separate films? Like why do you need to be like we're doing a female reboot? It's like just make Karen Gillan the lead of the next one. Like it's not a female reboot.
Yeah.
You're just the main character's a woman. Who cares? But like all female reboot tells me that it's like we're going to do the same thing as the first one, but make the characters girls, which I don't want to see.
Nothing about female reboot has nothing that has been marketed as a female reboot has done well. Like just don't acknowledge that it's that. Make it that, but don't use those terms in your announcement of it. Man, I feel like that meme of the guy who doesn't know what button to press and he's like wiping his brow now because I definitely only think one of these should go ahead.
Yeah. We don't need two films with women in them. Come on.
No, I just don't think it's a series that needs to have like a spin-off thread. I think just make it the sixth one and
exactly.
Restart the series.
I guess because we've established 5 films that like Johnny Depp is your main character. Like if they'd made the original trilogy and then just did another trilogy that had Margot Robbie starring in it, or Karen Gillan, you know, fine, like whatever.
Yeah.
But because it's weird now that you kind of almost have to call it a spin-off because it's not going to have anything familiar.
Well, just don't call it anything. Just call it Pirates of the Caribbean, blah, 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 blah. You don't need
Dead Woman's Chest.
Dead Woman's Chest.
That has different connotations.
I apologize. I did not realize what I was saying until I said it. Cool. Okay, what one do you think sounds better?
I'm definitely more interested in the Craig Mazin one. Craig Mazin. And I think, and I don't know, Karen Gillan to me is a more kind of interesting and unique star. Like Margot Robbie's been definitely, don't get me wrong, she's great and she's been in some fantastic movies, but I don't know, there's something about Karen Gillan that's like, oh yeah, what could she bring to it, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And because she's great in the Jumanji films, it's like she's proven in this dying action adventure genre.
Yeah.
But then again, like Bumblebee, I've described as like a perfect family movie as well.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you know, if Christina Hodson can write something of that caliber, I'd fucking sign me the fuck up.
Yeah, I'm conflicted.
Yeah, it's not sexism.
What?
It's not because I'm sexist.
Why would it be sexism? They're both about women.
Yeah. All right, so now it's time for the part of the podcast where you and I both pitch our continuing franchises.
Oh.
And you said you're worried that ours are the same.
I don't think they are now, but
okay.
I was worried.
Do you want to go first?
Okay, so Richard, this is going to take a while. I've got a lot of stuff.
Oh god, here we go.
This is the best continue the franchise I've done in months. So Richard, we are living in a time where all Disney are doing are cranking out these live-action remakes of their animated classics. Let me pitch to you, Richard, the first ever Disney animated remake of a live-action classic. So I am pitching you and the world, it's just called Pirates of the Caribbean, right?
Yeah.
And it is a remake of the first film done in the traditional Disney Renaissance 2D animation style, right? So it doesn't really matter who you cast as anyone because, you know, I'd be okay with someone who can do a really good Jack Sparrow voice playing Jack Sparrow, etc., etc. But one of the things that it does need is that it needs to be compressed a bit from a 2-hour, 20-minute movie into like a 1 hour, 30 to 40-minute film. And the way that a lot of animated films condense information is through the form of musicals. So,
oh my god, have you written some songs for us?
Richard, I have. So one of the reasons I rewatched the film last night was that I could go through it and look for moments that could be translated and compressed into song. And I've got varying degrees of effort for different things.
Oh my gosh.
But the one thing I want to stress is I have never written a Disney musical before. before. This is very much...
Yeah, you know Howard Ashman.
Yeah, this is very much a first draft of a lot of the stuff. I'm willing to take on board every piece of feedback. But the first thing I want to do is put in your mind that wonderful 90s Renaissance Disney visual style of those 2D characters. That's what it looks like, right? It looks indistinguishable from it looks like it could have come out in the 90s. I also want to kind of rejig it so that Elizabeth is more clearly the protagonist of the story. You could even say she's a Disney princess because she's the governor's daughter. Will is the Aladdin type character, and Jack is more of like the
genie.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so here is what you buy the soundtrack. Here's what the songs are. So the first song is called A Pirate's Life for Me. This would be the opening song, which at the start of the film, it actually starts on Will's doomed ship. It doesn't, go through the mist and show Elizabeth's ship. We start on Will's ship when he's a kid, and in this version, it is just another pirate ship. I'm not sure if it was explicitly a pirate ship that Will was on.
So this is like the Arabian Nights.
The Arabian Nights, exactly, and it's yo-ho, a bunch of unnamed characters singing A Pirate's Life for Me. Then they get attacked by an actual pirate ship, and the camera moves along to Elizabeth's ship where she's quietly singing yo-ho, a pirate's life for me, ending the song. Right? And that is the start of the film. Then the next song is called Port Royal. It is the I Want song sung by Elizabeth and Will and the citizens of Port Royal. Think the Belle song from Beauty and the Beast. That sort of thing. Yeah, exactly. Moving around Port Royal, establishing the setting, yada, yada, yada. And you can hear Will talk about how he's in love with her. You can hear Elizabeth talk about how she wants more, that sort of thing. It's very easy to imagine these things, I think. The film being a Disney structure does lend itself to a lot of these cliches already. All right, the next song is tentatively called You Have Heard of Me, which is Jack's introduction song. It's sort of a la One Jump Ahead from Aladdin. One jump ahead of the punch. And it sort of introduces his character. Musically, though, I would want it to be what the Pirates theme music as it is now is based off, right? So when you hear dun da 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 dun da 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 dun 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 da da, it is a callback to this song, which would be like, you are without a doubt the worst pirate I've ever heard of. But you have heard of me, that sort of thing, right? So yeah, the leitmotif of da 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 would sound like it's calling back to this song, and it's as he's escaping after the Navy are trying to take him in, and he gets all his stuff back, and. We'd also learn a lot of Jack's fabled sea turtle escape in this, because the citizens of Port Royal are also singing it, and the point of the song is they have heard of him, right? So everything they're singing is like, I heard he escaped on the back of sea turtles, and then someone will say something negative about him, and then he'll be like, but you have heard of me, like as he's like moving past them, right? So again, emphasizing that, yes, I am infamous, but part of the word infamous is the word famous. You have heard of me. Cool. Yep. So everyone's heard of him. The next song isn't really a song. I've called it the Chant of the Black Pearl, and this is when the Black Pearl attacks Port Royal, and it would not be a full-fledged song, but would be the crew chanting something over and over. I've written as a placeholder, we are cursed, we are cursed. We sail the seven seas, we are cursed, da 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 da, as they're attacking, right? And
how many tracks are on the soundtrack?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, but 4 of those are the same song, just reprised.
Okay.
And so that's as they're attacking, that's the Hello Poppet stuff is done with that kind of music playing in the background, which leads directly into the next song, which is the villain song, which is of course called best start believing in ghost stories, parentheses, you're in one. So this is a full-on, deliciously evil song. This is Barbossa's Be Prepared from The Lion King, right?
It's his Wait for It from Hamilton.
Yeah. So because that scene is so chaotic anyway, it almost feels like an accompaniment of a song is a natural fit for that, right? So it's Barbossa singing it with the pirates also, chiming in for the odd line, like the 1,000 bad guys with swords style, like bits and pieces from other characters. It starts with the dinner scene between Barbossa and Elizabeth, where he's telling her about the curse before hitting the chorus with the iconic line, and it can convey the information of the curse in song form. The next song is called Tortuga, or Able-Bodied Crew, which is essentially compressing the whole Tortuga and crew assembly into one song. It would end with them getting to Isla de Muerta. So it ends with like, we're an able-bodied crew, as they're on the ship, like sailing out to.
Yeah, nice.
Yep. Then the next song is called Load the Guns, and this is the battle between the Black Pearl and the Interceptor, again told through song. I don't have any real musical ideas or lyrical ideas, but I did think Jack yelling, "Stop blowing holes in my ship!" could be a fun little punchline, like something in the line before it rhymes with the word ship, and then cut to Jack being "Stop blowing holes in my ship!"
Very nice. And because also that's already like a quite a comical scene, how they're loading it with the cannons with cutlery.
Load the guns, and they're loading it with whatever they can find, right?
Yeah.
And it's sort of a song that a bunch of different characters can pop in to sing different parts. Okay, the next song I've just called Elizabeth and Will, and this is the only emotional
this is the one
beat
you skip.
I'm adding. This is the only emotional beat I'm adding to the story, which is while they're marooned on the island. So Jack and Elizabeth are marooned on the island. In between, when Jack passes out from being drunk and Elizabeth burning everything, she sings of her love for Will, and Will is also singing of his love for Elizabeth.
So this is the kitchen's not the same without you from SpongeBob.
Yeah, it is. Or it could almost be a bit like I Won't Say I'm in Love from Hercules. Oh, yeah. That sort of thing. The next song is called Take a Walk, and this is when Barbossa's when Captain Jack says you can be Commodore Barbossa, and then he's like, "Man the ships," and Barbossa looks at him and he's like, you give the orders, and he goes, "Men, take a walk." So this is the brewing battle between the Navy and the undead pirates of the Black Pearl, and it's both sides singing, and it also is a medley of all the previous songs in the film. Right, so it cuts. It'll be like, we're taking a walk. No, something something more bellowing and more I don't know, daunting. Then it'll cut to Elizabeth, who at this point in the story is locked up on the ship, and she sings a couple of bars from Elizabeth and Will. Cuts to Jack.
This is the One Day More from Les Mis.
One Day More, exactly. Yeah. Yep. Okay, and then the next song is when Will helps Jack escape from the gallows at the end, and it's a "You Have Heard of Me" reprise, but now it's Jack and Will singing it together, so they're both going da 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 as they're tripping up the Navy with a piece of rope, that sort of thing. And then the final song is "A Pirate's Life for Me" reprise as the new crew of the Black Pearl closing out the film with "A Pirate's Life for Me," which is essentially what happens in the film anyway. Yeah. But Richard, I've written one of these songs. A first draft of one of these songs. Can you guess which one it is?
Stop Blowing Holes in My Ship, that one?
No, I have written a tentative first draft for Best Start Believing in Ghost Stories.
Oh, yeah,
You're
course.
In one.
Yeah.
And I'd like to sing it for you right now.
I would love that.
Okay, so there's multiple characters singing the song. So this is my Barbossa voice. This is my Elizabeth voice. And then when I change voice, it'll be like one of the pirate zombies who chimes in for a line. Okay, here's how it goes. This is Aztec gold, blood money paid to stem the slaughter of Cortez. But the greed of Cortez was insatiable, vicious and deadly at worst. So the heathen gods made it so any mortal who thieves but a piece from the chest will be cursed. I hardly believe in ghost stories, Barbossa, I've not since I was a girl. Aye, that's exactly what I thought when first told the tale. But we found the gold at the edge of the world. We took them all, spent it, traded 'em and frittered 'em away for food, drink, money, and pleasurable company. But the more we spent, the more we lost, the more we knew we had to pay. And this is when the energy starts ramping up and she starts getting scared and like backing away. And he goes, soon drink would not satisfy, food turned to ash in our mouths. We are cursed men, Miss Turner, compelled by greed we were, now we drown. We feel nothing, neither pleasure nor pain. We're not alive and we cannot die. Not the cold from the deep, nor the heat from the sun. You'd best start believing in ghost stories, Miss Turner. You're in one. Okay. That's the chorus. Then it goes, this is another different pirate singing. It goes, for too long I've been parched of thirst and unable to quench it. For too long we've starved to death and haven't died. I feel nothing, not the wind on my face, nor the sting of the sea in my eyes. Back to Barbossa. The moonlight shows us for what we really are, and there's only one way we can end our curse. All the scattered pieces of the gold must be restored, and the blood repaid that's yours. What of me when your debt is paid? Will I be released when you're done? That all depends on whether or not you behave. You'd best start believing in ghost stories, Miss Turner. You're in one. And then all the pirates sing, we are cursed, we are cursed, we are cursed, sailing on these seven seas. And that'll be when she's like thrown up on the blanket and all that sort of says, we are cursed, we are cursed, we are cursed, sailing on these seven seas. You're welcome to swim, but there's nowhere to run. You'd best start believing in ghost stories, Miss Turner. And then all the pirates go, you're in one. And that's the end of the song.
Very good.
It's a first draft. It's a first draft.
All right, well,
I wrote this at 3 a.m.
Tune in next time for the second draft.
If anyone would like to take any of these ideas and create actual songs out of them, that would be amazing.
At Carlisle.
I don't know how many musical fans we have. Carlisle, if you're listening. I was like shaking performing that because I was so nervous.
That was very good. I all week I've been so proud of my Continue the Franchise, and you just fucking. Yeah. I should have gone first.
I'm sorry.
My one isn't anywhere near as well thought out as yours.
I'm sorry,
but but that was very good. Most effort, more effort into your Continue the Franchise than I put into the entire podcast. So my Continue the Franchise, we have a rule that it's not super explicit, but the film has to come out now. It has to be how you would continue the franchise if you had to make something today. However, you could rework this and make it work now, but ideally, this would be Pirates of the Caribbean 4 and would have come out in 2011. Okay, so bear with me for that. You can do plot contrivances to make it happen nowadays. So this is my idea, and this is like what I think, and I was so proud of this idea that like this should be. You make imagine the first three are the perfect trilogy we described earlier, where it's you got Davy Jones, then like Norrington becomes a better villain. You wrap that up; it's all tied off nicely. But then there's the tease at the end that he's going off looking for the Fountain of Youth. Pirates of the Caribbean 4 starts cold open in media res. They're at the Fountain of Youth. It's a classic Jack Sparrow, one step ahead of everyone, amazing fight scene, everything's dynamic, and then he finally drinks from the Fountain of Youth, and then through some kind of hilarious mishap, he finds out that it doesn't just give him like extra life, it makes him immortal. And then we cut to 400 years later. Or 250 years later. And it's set in modern day. And it's like you could even do that. He's been sailing the seven seas, he's lost, and then like so I imagine the title would come up, and then it's like Jack's piloting the Black Pearl, and then because he got it back off Barbossa, I guess, and then like a cruise liner just goes in the background a shot, and then so it's like. Now we have this new trilogy, the Pirates of the Caribbean, set in modern day. So you're already not trying to recapture the magic of the first. You've got it's the same franchise, but it's like you would have like the past trilogy and the present trilogy. And And I was trying to brainstorm like ideas of like where the plot could go, and it's one of those things you kind of have to have Jack Sparrow be the character, because it's like,
Right.
if you just said, oh, here's a new pirate character and it takes place in modern day, it's like, well, there's no, I mean, you could kind of, it's still kind of interesting, the fish out of water kind of thing, but it's like, if we're following Jack Sparrow, like that's really what you want to see. And so, he would like end up getting on land, and or maybe he could have become the captain of the Dutchman, and then it's like we see like his first time on land because he got lost is like 250 years later. But yeah, I think that would be like a fun place to take the franchise that's like unexpected, but also kind of like, I don't know, like in a sense, despite how like purist we've been throughout this whole podcast about like what the first one does, and like it feels like it doesn't really like betray where the franchise could go, or like where you would expect a Disney franchise to go.
There's no going back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it's at this point, it's like my investment in the series is so low now that fuck it, do something like this then.
Yeah.
Do the cancelled Gladiator sequel.
Yeah. But yeah, because I was really interested to know what you thought of it, because it's one of those things that I was like, fuck yeah, like.
Yeah, sure. At this point, if 10 years ago I might not have been as keen on the idea, but now I'm like, oh my god, do something.
Yeah.
They do this, and it's just about undead pirates, and Davy Jones comes back, and it's
Yeah.
like, no!
Yeah. Yeah, I can't think of like what the actual conflict would be, but you'd have like a lot of like interesting things. Like he goes into a store and there's all these kinds of rum, and he's like, "Oh, I could get used to this." There would be a line in the film. It would be, "I could get used to this." There'll be his new catchphrase. It'd be like people would get on shirts. All right. Well, that's kind of.
Do you have a title?
Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides. It works.
Wow. on Future Tides. Days of Future Tides.
All right, so now it's time for the part of the podcast which we mentioned earlier, which is ranking that. So we've got a Nymphomaniac constant, which is the...
This is on letterboxd.com.
This is on letterboxd.com. Yeah, you can find that in the show notes. So the perfectly average franchise is Nymphomaniac, because one is really good, one is really bad, and they cancel each other out. So I've kind of used that as the midpoint. It's currently at number 46. Where presumably we both agree this goes below that.
It's hard. It's hard because it's like, so surrounding Nymphomaniac, at 44 we've got High School Musical, at 45 we've got The Mighty Ducks, at 46 we've got Nymphomaniac, and then at 47 we've got GoldenEye, the Pierce Brosnan Bond series, which, you know what, that does echo the same trajectory as Pirates of the Caribbean. Yeah, maybe it's very close to Nymphomaniac, I think.
Interesting, yeah.
Do you think, I would say there's an argument at least that it would go above GoldenEye, above the Pierce Brosnan films, because the sequels are all bad, but...
It's an interesting franchise.
It's an interesting franchise, and also, like, Curse of the Black Pearl's better than GoldenEye.
Yeah.
So if we're judging it by the merit of its best film, then it's above GoldenEye. But are the sequels so bad that we throw it down more to where The Hobbit is at 55, which again is another almost paralleled? How bad are the sequels? That's what we're saying. And we're judging it as a franchise. So
or maybe does it belong next to Twilight so that Davy Jones and Charlie Swan can be together as two of the greatest characters ever put to film?
I guess so. Twilight is a very different kind of bad to the Pirates of the Caribbean sequels.
Should we go between GoldenEye and Twilight?
Okay, so 48 that would make it.
All right, it's locked in.
That's such a shame. What a shame that the franchise goes there.
Imagine if every film was as good as the first one.
Imagine. And like that first one is probably one of the best films we've watched for the podcast.
Yeah.
You know, but the sequels have such bad faith that they are cast that low. Yeah, well, that's a shame.
Oh, well. Hey, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
All right, now it's time for our final segment.
Hooray.
Because we've also got a post-credit scene coming up, so stick around after the show for that. Okay, this is Franchise Roulette. So we've got a list of 170 something franchises, which we are going to cover next week. Oh my god! Yeah, and so I've got a random number generator. AJ, have you got the list open?
I can get it open. So yeah, basically what's going to happen is Richard's going to draw a random number, and that random number will then correlate to a franchise on our list, and that will be the franchise we cover next fortnight. Very exciting. We don't get to do this enough these days, so
yeah,
be interesting
I
to see
like to take every opportunity we can to do it.
Yeah.
All right. So, because this was suggested by our Patreon, we didn't mention that the entire podcast. For just $1, you too can suggest a franchise. Pirates of the Caribbean, what a great franchise suggestion!
Yeah,
it was a
Thank
fucking
you so much.
heated poll as well.
Oh, they're getting heated every month now. They get heated.
All right, here's the random number.
124.
All right, franchise number 124. Oh shit.
What is it?
There's no getting out of this one.
What? But get me to guess it.
Well, you'll be happy, and I'll be extremely lost. Despite apparently, I guess I'll be captaining this episode. It's
Is it Yu-Gi-Oh?
Yeah. It says there's 3, maybe 4 movies.
Let's look into it.
We're doing this. This is our third. This will be our third franchise, which is based on a TV show after Sex and the City and the SpongeBob movies. And I always feel like I'm cheating doing TV show movies because it's like, it feels like I need to watch the TV show to fully grasp what's happening here. How accessible are these movies to...
Oh my god, not at all.
Oh my god.
Okay, so the thing about Japanese films is that like they will often release like shorter than usual films in cinemas, like they're genuine theatrical releases. So there's Yu-Gi-Oh! The 1999 film, which predates the Duel Monsters anime, because there's what's called a season 0 of the show, and I cannot wait for you to tell me all about this. And so there's a 30-minute theatrical released movie about that, which I think is on YouTube, and then there's Pyramid of Light, which was made by the West and it is immediately decanonized in the episode that follows it. Then there's Bonds Beyond Time, which honestly I'm going to be lost in, which is because there's the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime that most famously features Yugi and Yami Yugi. There's like 5 or 6 spin-offs to that, and there's one there's a movie that features 3 of the protagonists who somehow meet across time, and then there's Dark Side of Dimensions, which takes place after the Duel Monsters anime and was released only a few years ago.
How long are these movies?
So Pyramid of Light and Dark Side of Dimensions are like full-fledged movies, like 90 to 100 minutes. Yu-Gi-Oh! 1999 is 30 minutes. Bonds Beyond Time is 50 minutes.
Feels like those ones don't count then.
Well, I mean, they're theatrical released. It's an interesting... we watched a couple of episodes of SpongeBob when we covered that.
Oh,
which was your choice to classify them.
This shouldn't be on the list. This is a 2-film franchise.
I mean, it is.
Oh, this is bullshit. This is some bullshit. I watched... Richard recently got back into Yu-Gi-Oh! In the last year or so, and I caught a couple episodes on TV that my flatmates were watching, and I messaged him and I said, been watching Yu-Gi-Oh! And he's like, oh yeah, and I was like, not very good. And he said, yeah, man.
Yeah.
People in the Discord are going to be very happy about this.
I love that you're running it.
Speaking of which, join the Discord, everybody, along with all our other social medias. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and Twitter at cultpopture, or you can email us at cultpopturemedia@gmail.com. Tell us why we are so wrong about the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Tell us why they are way better than we've given them credit for. I really, really want to hear your thoughts, and I will definitely read your comments. I actually will definitely read your comments, but nothing will change my opinion.
Do you know what's funny as well? We've had someone staying with us for the last week or so, and so like she hasn't been working at the moment because of lockdown and everything, but so in the morning, because I've been working late shift, in the morning I've been watching the Pirates of the Caribbean sequels, and I felt bad like being like, oh, I have to watch these for my podcast, like, you know, like, do you want to watch them with me? To now have to do that with Yu-Gi-Oh! The movie, a famously horrible movie.
Oh God.
Like,
this feels
bad if you like the show.
the
I cannot
podcast.
wait to hear your thoughts on this.
Fuck! I'm angry. I'm angry because I don't think they should be on the list. But too much content has been born from this discussion for us to even think about not doing it now.
to re-record it. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. It's like, look, we've had a lot of discussions lately about what counts as a film franchise, and you and I vehemently defend the inclusion of the Red Curtain trilogy, not because every film franchise every set of films that was released on a box set is a franchise, but it's an interesting exception. It's an interesting thing to talk about. You know, we're used to our Western film releases, and so it's interesting to talk about, to include that. I mean, that's what I think. I mean, like they were theatrically released. They're films. They refer to them as films. However, having said that, we probably should have watched the first 2 episodes of Inhumans for the MCU because they were theatrically released as well.
All right, well, I can't wait to hear what people think about this.
Oh God, we're playing with fire. I'm just realizing now, like, God, where is this gonna go? I cannot wait. I genuinely cannot wait for this episode.
Oh, God damn it! I do not. I just dead ass do not want to watch the Yu-Gi-Oh movies.
Get your flatmates, get your flatmates who like Yu-Gi-Oh and get them to.
They moved out.
Oh well, have them over. You're in.
Oh my God! All right. Well, I guess it is what it is. Yarrrr. Stay tuned for our post-credit scene. It'll be better than the Pirates of the Caribbean ones. And Richard, we're something, and really bad eggs. Drink up, me hearties, yo-ho!
And now bring me that horizon.
That horizon. He says a rendition of that in the 5th film.
It's dumb how, you know, the film ends with him saying, bring me that horizon, and then there's the band, bring me the horizon. It's like, why would you name yourselves after a misquote of a film?
All right, everybody, goodbye.
Yeah, bye.
Okay, everybody, welcome to the post-credit scene of this episode. This is a segment brought to you by our Patreon, where if you donate $5 or more, you get the esteemed honor of giving us something to talk about. Woo! I'm here with Richard. Hey, Richard.
Hey.
And today's post-credit scene comes to us from Ed Amon, who asks, if you were in the writer's room for the first Expendables, which plot lines would you instantly object to going into a final cut, and what will be your alternatives? Now, this feels like a question we should have answered just after we watched the Expendables, because I do not retain enough information about that franchise to fully answer this. I think so. What do you have any immediate ideas?
I think mine. It's not like so much. I would instantly object to something going in, but it's like it's more the lack of, and so I guess this is the alternative, is that it needs to be more about how old they are. Like it's weird that they're just like, yep, we're just a bunch of mercenaries in our 60s, and it's like, yeah, like it should be. I don't have a problem with your first movie being the One Last Ride movie, you know?
Mm.
That because you have baked into it all of this, all of the real world lore of these guys' careers and the fact that they're all
Yeah.
teaming up. And then you can make some convoluted reason why they come back in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But the first one from the get go should already be about how they're aging mercenaries, and they're the ones that they're the fact that they're expendable should be more like, it doesn't care if some fucking 70-year-old mercenary dies trying to take down Eric Roberts.
It's it's a good title, but it's a bad title for the franchise, because
Yeah.
the fact that they're expendable is not really true, and also rarely brought into the fray
and
at
like
all.
it should be more about Jason Statham, like having to earn his place among the ranks and stuff, like, or there should be, I don't know, I feel like there's just a lot more world building that you would kind of assume would be there, not like
Yeah.
before you watch the film you'd assume like, oh, like it's a bunch of aging mercenaries, but it's like they are aging, but it's never brought into it.
The Expendables title should have a double meaning. It should both be because they are like warlord mercenaries, but also because we live in an ageist society that doesn't value the elderly. Like, that we consider the elderly expendable as a society, and that could be a fun little double meaning that would go almost certainly underappreciated from its main target audience.